This is Summoning Insight, the longest running, in my opinion, the best League of Legends talk show in history. Obviously, only in the history of League of Legends, but I'll just say in history, it sounds like all of time and space. No one can ever beat this podcast. No one can, by the way. Like, what's weird is I actually notice, even when people do shows with people who are literally on like LEC. I mean, by the way, is that one where they brought back the jungle and they have like a certain mate that dies on its arse, the viewership. So somehow we are just the longest running, partly the rapport, partly the history. Obviously, we're willing to. The joke is, other people daren't even say things. We shout about them. That's sort of how you could define us. There could even be a slogan there or something, right?
We can talk
Yeah.
about something to start the show
Everything.
that I guarantee you no one else is going to talk about, because of course they can't, because this is the show where we can actually discuss things that people who are in the co-streaming / caster / team handcuffs can never discuss, and that is the peak, Thorin, the peak hilarity of LCS suddenly discovering that Twitch subs exist and trying to sell that to people. Because if you guys didn't
11
know,
years later.
11 years later, this week, LCS announced via totally legitimate commissioner and not product lead only, Mark Zimmerman, that they are going to start opening up the opportunity for you, the fans, to pay them money via Twitch subs. And in return for this, you are going to get, this will blow your mind, ad-free viewing, just like you do anytime you subscribe to a channel on Twitch. So not even unique. And also, Thorin, the funniest part of this is the only time that the LCS plays ads is in the 3-minute countdown timer breaks. So the ads never actually interrupt your content in the first place, because those are actually built in after every game. So that is useless.
They should take that out, since that was obviously designed when they wanted it to be free, isn't it? That also doesn't make any sense, right?
So the other hilarious part of this, or there's many, they're offering you an in-game emote if you subscribe, which certainly is going to motivate a hell of a lot of people to give them, recurring payments every month. What else they offer? Oh, you get emotes on their channel just like any other streamer. Yeah, that's basically it.
That's it.
Remember that when I've got some comparisons for you guys, because when the Overwatch League launched, they actually had a command center for Twitch subs where you could watch different players' perspectives, and you would have all these other, available opportunities. I think they said they're going to be offering like the ability to vote if you're a sub on the Pro View you want them to release. So it's not even you get exclusive access to the Pro View, as far as I can tell. It's just like you pick which player's Pro View gets released.
As someone who owns stock in the company that made the real Pro View, I haven't got a response yet, but I'm actually going to find out, are they still using that product, or is that they've ripped it off and it's just called Pro View now? I want to know which it is, because I have a sneaky suspicion it might be the latter, Monty, and they just spent the whole time reverse engineering it and made their own. But we'll see on that one. So, if I find out, I'll let you know.
Now, you can hate the Overwatch League as much as you want, but factually, they did offer a very cool service for Twitch subscribers, and it was like a new product that they worked with Twitch to develop to drive subscriptions when it came out. It wasn't just basically the same shit you get, like access to a Discord community plus no ads. Like the only thing that they added that you couldn't get from a normal streamer is an emote in the game, which probably isn't worth very much for many people. Remember, you can buy those esports emotes for about $2.50, which is significantly cheaper than that Twitch sub. You buy probably, now they raised the Twitch subs to $6, so you could buy more than 2 of the esports emotes every month if you wanted to, and you don't really get a very different, experience from the Twitch subscribers. And not only that, guys, but I will drop some information for you that really only I know, or a couple of other people know, who speak English at least. And that is, of course, we have to go back, use our esports time machine to go back to the year of our Lord, 2013. And why are we picking this year? Because OGN, the independent tournament operator that I worked for, back in the day, guys, when they ran League of Legends in Korea, they offered Twitch subscriptions. And what did you get for a Twitch subscription? Well, if you weren't a subscriber, guys, you actually couldn't watch the English broadcast above 480p. And you didn't have access to VOD. So if you were, say, asleep, as many people in the West were when these matches were happening, or at work if you're in Europe, or at school if you're in Europe during the day, you had to subscribe. And you might think, wow, they wouldn't offer it for free. Well, yeah, that's because in the olden times, guys, as any of you StarCraft fans can remember from the GOM TV days, esports was basically pay-per-view, right? I used to pay $20 a month to watch GOM TV StarCraft. So, you know, pay $5 wasn't
And
all
we
that
even had
terrible.
those ones where League and StarCraft even had some pay-per-view MLGs, remember? The ones in the office in New York. So it was actually like a common accepted thing back then. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And so for those people who are wondering, I can just straight up tell you the amount of money that OGN was making from this, because they probably, in 2013, they had 25,000 Twitch subscribers, which for 2013, I would say if they weren't the #1 subscribed channel on Twitch, they were probably pretty close, because that was a fuck ton of subs for 2013.
And that wasn't even the peak of League. Like, if anything, got bigger the next few years.
We're not even there yet, because Thorin, the viewership of Korean League of Legends today is significantly larger. In fact, they keep on hitting new milestones, even on the English language streams. So this was still a pretty niche product, but there were 25,000 like really hardcore League of Legends fans who were willing to subscribe for the high definition and the VODs, because this was not posted on YouTube back in the days. It's the only way to get this kind of content. And that means that the English stream alone was turning in over $1 million per year. And to put this in perspective, because I saw some dumbasses on social media commenting about this, I was paid in that first year, my first year of working at OGN, around $45,000 to work for OGN.
Okay.
So it was not great money, guys. I mean, in Korea, it's actually
it's
fine.
Good for esports.
It's good for esports. It was good for esports in 2013, and it's like, you know, it wasn't 45 million won, it was 45K. You know, so I actually lived quite well in Korea on that as like a single dude in his mid-20s. I'm not complaining, but to put it in perspective, like, Doa made the same amount of money that I did. So us combined were making, you know, less than 10% of the amount of money that they were making off of the English stream.
Yeah.
And this was, you know, this was a piggyback off the Korean stream. So this was just basically free money. It
was just another desk with 2 mics, basically, and another fucking camera, and they made like 900K off it, like you're saying. Yeah.
And they had like a producer, you know what I mean? For us. Yeah. So, but I mean, still, it was pretty much gravy for them. It was a big, you know, source of income, especially, you know, the cost to profit ratio was absolutely enormous off of that. And clearly, you know, it was different for the Korean side. They weren't charging pay-per-view because primarily they were on television at that time. It was before like live streaming had really gotten super big in Korea. And Riot came in and they said, nope, everything has to be free. So they eliminated that, lost all their subscriptions, lost the revenue source. I imagine Riot probably paid them something in return for that. But I don't know how much money that was. I doubt it was the full amount. And so to the point, like, you know, we're talking about a system that if that had been allowed to continue for the last decade, you know, I'll be pessimistic, Thorin, and I'll say, well, maybe they would only be making $2 million a year now off of the English content, right? After building up that subscription base over, you know, for over a decade. But even then we're talking about, you know, how much money have they left on the table? $15 million, $20 million? And that is just off of Korean League of Legends and English, guys.
Think also what you could have done, like you're saying, with that budget. Like if the numbers kept getting pumped up for the subs, then you could have taken people like you and Doa who were there, Papa Smithy was there, later on LS, Atlas. You could have actually had them create shoulder content as part of their deal, because you'd have so much to pay them. And it'd be so cheap to produce. You could have had like 4 or 5 shows, slates of things. It wouldn't be LS streaming, he'd be creating it for you.
Well, yeah, remember, Thorin, that they started to do things like OGN started to create the countdown of MonteCristo and other shows that I wanted to do. They did start to produce, you know, English language shoulder content as a result. So like there was definitely a movement in that direction, and the idea of providing value for paying customers and using that money to create more content, which then could be sold to advertisers, right? And, you know, the thing about this is like, it's not only this, like imagine if we had this system on LCS when it was at its peak. If I'm telling you in 2013 they could get 25,000 subs.
Oh, I'd have way more.
You know,
bro, 2013 and 2014 is when, unironically, someone like Bjergsen could get 50K concurrent.
Yep.
That's just his solo stream. Imagine what CLG TSM would have done back then. It was like 400K views or whatever. Like, you could have had insane numbers of subs.
Yeah,
of course.
by 2015, 2016, the LCS was doing like 400,000 concurrents for regular season matches. Compare that to today, guys.
Donations. If you were going to Game 5 with the silver script, all the idiots would be doing the hype trains and all that shit, wouldn't they? You'd be raking in the money, mate.
So if they had actually
almost.
Now here's the thing, Thorin. I'm not going to call Riot dumb because I don't know how much money they made off of making esports free, right? Because the great mystery the great mystery of esports is what is the conversion of viewers that they get to skins and digital sales. And because I don't and can't know that, I can't say that they were dumb, but I can say that if they weren't making tens or hundreds of millions of dollars off of this, that they were dumb. And here's what, Thorin, if they are making hundreds of millions of dollars off of this, then why aren't the teams more angry about the lack of transparency into the sales that are basically being made off of their players?
This is where I've always told people this. There's two areas that if you're a League of Legends fan, you should be really sad about the way Richard Lewis's career went. One is that he's just never cared about Korea in the same way we do. He wasn't a StarCraft guy, so he never revered it as the mecca of esports. He's a Counter-Strike guy from Europe, and he Call of Duty and think of your local lands. So he's not the guy who ever wanted to go and prod around Korean esports. But if he had, by the way, he would have broken all the massive stories. Think about some of the things he could have revealed from there. But he didn't give a fuck. Similarly, if he was in League and there was an incentive structure that made it worth him doing it, like he gets the 100K views when he does the League story, instead of, some dickhead rewriting it and then them getting all the fucking views on Reddit, etc. Like, he's the only guy who could get you that number, Monty. He could probably get a guy within fucking Twitch or within Riot who could tell you the numbers of what it did. He could probably get that info, because that's the other thing I don't get about these teams. They're doing that thing where it's like, quick, Congress is going to bring Facebook. Are you selling the information? You don't want that. That's some nonsense in public. You want a guy internally, like those videos that Project Veritas did, where they take someone on like a date who's like working in middle management, and he stupidly spilled all the beans because some hot woman was like, "Yeah, what else is it like there?" And he's just fucking, "Oh my God, I've two glasses of wine." Like, that's what you want. You want some guy who tells you that, like, actually, you know what? A lot of these stupid teams like Reginald, we all laugh at him. We're making like $200 million. We give him back $2 million. That's what you want. That would be the story of the year. Sorry, a fucking decade more, like, actually. Imagine if that came out.
Yeah. And look, like, it's only going to get worse for teams, which is, the point that I'm making. And like, there isn't any information that I saw. They said they were going to match it and add it to the prize pool in terms of subscriptions. But also, I mean, let's just go over this. The incentives are weak, as I said, for the subscribers. And not only that, but there's no mention of like sharing revenue with the teams. And this basically is a substitute for a media rights deal. Which again, Riot has failed to generate at any point in time, really. And then the knock-on effect of this is it's not even the right time to do it. You offer no incentives for people to do this, Thorin. And basically, at the end of the day, you are now competing with co-streamers who you are allowing to stream your game, who people are much more likely to subscribe to. Pop quiz. If you guys are watching League of Legends, are you going to subscribe to LCS, or are you going to subscribe to Cadril or Dom? Because people, myself included, would rather support the individual than the company. And that's just the precedent that Riot has set. So now, of all time, to set up this program of subscription is like the worst time. And not only that, Thorin, but we have a pretty good idea.
What year did CodeStream even start? Wasn't it like something mad, like season 10 or something? It was ages after this period. When was it? You know when it started?
It was a long time. I mean, it was like probably 2020 or 2021.
I think it was around then. I don't think it was around in even the season 8 and stuff. I don't think so.
No. I mean, they wouldn't allow people to do it.
So they had years where they could have had all the viewers, yeah.
And built up real incentives for people to subscribe. Like, it may not even be that you have to paywall content, but like, think about this, Thorin. If you can link to your account to Twitch, you could literally just give people skins. You could just give people skins. You could make unique skins where you have to subscribe for a certain amount of time. Like, it's not that fucking hard. You could have made one skin per region per subscription. You could have done that. You could have made...
If you hadn't have let them leverage the fact that they have so many views, you have to have the core streamers. He now actually has some of the power. The other move you could have done from day one is the sub that you give to Riot, a cut of that goes to all the core streamers. So like some goes to Cadril, some goes to... That would have been sick too. That's like a way to make someone potentially still sub to you. Like that would even be an interesting angle.
Yeah. And look, here's the thing. We actually have a pretty good idea about how many people sub to LCS over the first couple of days of this, because we have Stream Charts, which is the same service that does ES Charts, which does the reporting. It's the same thing, except it's just for streamers. So you can go to the LCS stream and you can see, because basically I'm pretty sure what it does is it scrapes the IRC chat messages from Twitch chat.
So you see every time someone subscribes.
So you see everything every time you subscribe. So it's probably pretty accurate, right?
Yeah,
if they're doing
probably.
that.
Yeah.
And they said last time I checked, it was 1,500 subs, which if Riot has a 70-30 split with Twitch, right? Which I assume they do. Now, I don't know exactly what their split is going to be off of the Prime subs in particular. So, let's pretend that, each person is actually just paying for a tier 1 sub, right? So they have 1,500 subs. That means that they would be making $6,000 a month, $6,200 a month. If it's all tier 1 subs at the new price of $5.99 and they have a 70-30 split, which I, again, presume that they do. So all of this effort is being put to $6,200 a month, or if all of those people remain signed up, $75,000 a year. How does that move the needle for this league at all? The cost of running a day, that probably covers like the cost of running 2 days maybe of LCS, maybe just one, honestly, of all the crew, all the expenses. It's not going to do anything. Like, this doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't generate revenue. This is how desperate they have gotten, which is that they ignored this for over a decade, and now they are just trying to do this for $70K. It's horrible.
Also, here's what I don't get. You did it when we're already into the playoffs. Do it at the beginning of the year. Have the whole split to build into it and build up the sub base and all that. And by the way, expand out what you get for the sub. Ask people, is this what you like? Do polls. I prefer this. I prefer that. What type of emotes do you want? Instead, you've done this for real. This looks Monty. Here's the joke. I'm in the same boat, mate. You'd think I dreamed of being a streamer. No, what happened was I realized, because of certain sponsorship things I have, and the fact that basically, like, YouTube itself doesn't make that much per video, so kind of the opportunity cost, I'd actually be better off sometimes writing a Substack article, or doing a talk show with you guys, or doing like just a drama post, not doing a video of like, right, here's why in 2015 actually Deft improved as a laner in the LPL. Like, that video doesn't get the views. I won't ever make money back off that. So I realized I should start streaming. Then when I'm streaming, I'm like, people sub. That's actually a way to make money. Like, I did that as an afterthought. I think the same thing happened, Monty. They were just like, not making that much money. Can't get the viewership to go up. Twitch subs exist. Could turn those on. And someone just decided, I think a week and a half ago, like, pretend it was all the plan. We are announcing a new thing, Twitch subscriptions. You can subscribe. You will receive things, emotes. Because you know the worst thing about Riot? They don't really think they invented esports, guys. They just act in their ecosystem like Big Brother, and they force you to gaslight you that it didn't exist. And then you have to go, double plus good, Monty. You know they've added Twitch subs. That's excellent. That'll be more revenue for the league and for the teams. That's only a positive. But what do you mean, Mr. Winston? Didn't Twitch subs used to exist? I don't know what you're talking about. We don't need any of that seditious talk around here. I think I have to go now and get reports on that guy. It's fucking mental. Why is the scene like this? And by the way, this is how fucking stupid esports people are. They've already done the cardinal sin fuck up, which is when you subscribe, whatever your name is appears on the screen of the LCS. So the first time they did it, someone used a fucking slur in their name. On the LCS. By the way, you do know, this is where you're lucky I'm not Richard Lewis. I could just do a whole article right now, contact Washington Post and stuff. Did you know Riot Games just showed a slur on their stream? It's in their studio based in LA.
All their sponsors.
I could do every fucking angle on these cunts. I'm actually somewhat like merciful to these fuckers because I sort of want esports to succeed. But like that, but this way, they're the fuckers, remember, Monty, that like in different spaces are wrecking people for the most minor infractions and rude that you're doing that or something. And then they're showing that on screen. Bro, I'm not joking. Even though this sounds harsh, I actually low-key think if you're going to be Riot with what you claim are your morals and your perspective and professionalism, that probably should be someone's job. How did you not figure out? Sir, if we show the names, what if someone even just puts fuck Riot Games, they are evil, China, Uyghur, Uyghur, Uyghur? What if someone did that as a name? Well, it would have just showed on screen. What if on screen it said Taiwan is an independent country of China?
We go, guys.
That's probably an exec fired, by the way.
Look. I mean, they clearly, and by the way, the slurs that they were putting there were, creatively spelled to avoid filters.
I'm sure if you put the obvious word, it gets put out, but they put like the obvious, like the counter to the counter, like basketball,
like you know exactly what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
And by the way, guys, if you want to put elephant,
if you put my name and I subscribe now, Monty, as Wayne Care, everyone in England would know that says wanker, but I'm no, it's Wayne Care subscribed for a month, like. Still, we all know what it means, don't we? We all know what it means.
Also, if you guys for this weekend want to subscribe with Last Free Nation names, Riot paid women 100 million, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Whatever you want. Send them to us. We'll shout you out on the next show.
Monty died for this, all sorts of shit like that. all the best ones. Yeah, whatever you want to call it. I'm in for that.
Apparently, you're just not going to get punished by Riot because they think it's very important to show every single subscriber on the stream on their official broadcast, and hopefully we can get it next to like a nice sponsor logo as well that they have.
Also, that video because it was on Dom's stream, I saw it, was genius because he actually went, "Oh, cool, they've got like the things turned on," and people are sobbing, and as he says that name just popped up, and it's like. Nothing you do, is there? Which, by the way, as a side detail, right? This is how incompetent you are. You've just put a slur on "I will dominate stream." You fucking cretin. Not done. Not done. You know the same guy who had our co-streaming rights taken away because he said, "Are you polishing your nails?" You're putting your slurs on his stream, going out to all his viewership. They're such clowns, it's mental, mate. That's like the first thing you'd think about if you were going to do it. Like, well, obviously you can't just show the name in that way.
Also, Thorin, if let me do my evil marketing hat for a second. Let's say I was a gambling site, Thorin. Why wouldn't that efficiency of advertising is crazy? Why wouldn't I just buy 100 subs with my different iterations of my gambling site? And just put
because you have unlimited money, essentially. Yeah, just keep doing it.
What people could have made names, dissing the sponsors. Like, I mean, there's basically infinite opportunity for trolling here. And yeah, it's just whatever because they're putting them all up on the screen. Anything could arise. And did. In fact, anything did arise. I mean, it's just so obvious. It takes me back to a simpler time in esports where people would ask questions on the Golem forums as Poop Feast 420 or Artosis Mermaid, which was very funny, honestly. But it didn't, at least when Artosis was reading those questions on Golem TV and on the tournaments, if it was too crass or inappropriate, he could take it out. But otherwise, it just ended up being very funny. But yeah, it's just outrageous that we're actually at this point right now where we have not, Riot has failed to monetize to such a degree. And it's just the timing too. The timing right before playoffs. Thorin, do they think I'm sure some people are going to leave those subscriptions on, but why would we do this at the end of summer playoffs when we're about to be off for like 5 fucking months? Before we get into the new LCS season.
And then they're just going to not sub again until
they're just going to cancel the subscription because there's no LCS. There's no value. And also any data that you get is going to be false about this because what you're going to do is you're going to hit a huge number of subscribers immediately and you're going to say, well, what if we could do 1,500 subscribers every week? But you can't because the people who are going to subscribe are overwhelmingly going to subscribe up front, and it's going to peter off dramatically after that point in time. So, I mean, I'm not going to say it's a bad idea because it's free money, but it's not even really free money, Thorin, because when you think about it, everything Riot does has a cost associated with it, right? And it's a significant cost because they have to run it through 1 million committees to get approval. Like, you have to write the script for the video that Mark Z is in, shoot the video that Mark Z is in, edit the video, make sure that script is approved by global comms. You have to have somebody, an artist at Riot, or hire a contractor to design all the emotes, then run those through a bunch of committees for approval. And then you have to design the emote in the game, run that through committees for approval, right? The cost of this is tens of thousands of dollars most likely. So you're in the hole before you even start this project because you're taking away employee time and other company resources to even develop it. And it's so expensive to do that, as opposed to a streamer being like, haha, I pay $10 for emote and then upload it to Twitch and approved. Like, there's no cost associated with doing that. So the whole project is just ridiculous from a corporate perspective and a corporate cost perspective. I mean, it's going to take months before they even recoup the cost of creating these things, which there isn't enough LCS left this year to do, most likely. So as a test, like, I think it's just complete nonsense. And it's way too late unless they start offering better and more premium content. Like, if they bring back ProView and that's associated with a Twitch sub, then maybe I'm on board, but it needs to have real value to fans.
I mean, by the way, especially not just for LCS, but for the other regions, like the obvious one always, I know they did like those, if you know Chinese streams, you can find them sometimes where they still do their version of a Pro View, like solo stream. I would pay for LCK and LPL Pro View. I mean, obviously I have stock in the company, so I could get it for free, but I would pay for that. If I actually didn't have the stock, that would be mega worth it. If I can see Jackie Love's clicks or fucking Chovy's clicks, that's what I want. That, by the way, that's absolutely premium content. Who the fuck doesn't want that? It's insane.
Be nice to
and
have.
Also, everything is too little too late. Twitch subs, 11 years late. Emotes, 1 billion years late. Oh, we're going to make fucking digital items. Like, how long? What were we doing all this time? The worst thing about this was aged so poorly, and every dickhead on Reddit agreed with them. It's like, no, Riot is kind. They are just paying for all of esports themselves. How did that work out? I bet if you could ask Tencent now, they would just go back in a time machine and just charge from the beginning everything and gouge you. Of course they would. It's actually mental how stupid Riot is, isn't it? In fact, that's why, Monty, your theory seems to have the most obvious, efficacy to it. The reason why they didn't charge and lied that they spent money on esports is it was a drop in the bucket to spend, but they just made like 100 ROI on everything they spent. Yep. And they made so much off skins and so much off champions. And I'll almost guarantee, Monty, here's also I will never get the information. I'll bet that there's a world where, like, as the meta switched, suddenly the skins of those champions just go up and down. And that's why magically certain champions come back in the meta. And then we have weird metas where you let something weird through that never was played before. And then it goes away again, and fucking hell, it's so ridiculous, isn't it? Like, you can never be too cynical with this company. You have to assume they don't do it out the kindness of their heart, that they're doing it for profit reasons.
And this is I mean, I think Riot has like legit given up on making being a good partner to the teams in the ecosystem, not only because they continue to change the deal for teams, but they continue to consolidate leagues. They all of the regional leagues that they developed, well, those have all just been consolidated into other leagues now. Like, we don't have a bunch of independent leagues anymore. There is no more Turkish league, right? It's all been folded into and amalgamated with other systems. And so I think Riot just knows that they can't support all of these teams unless they do the thing that they don't want to do, which is reveal the actual info. But if I am a partner, I am not being treated like a partner if I'm a team with Riot, because I have no transparency into the business that we are in together. They dictate everything. The teams do not have insights into the amount of money that esports marketing is making. They do not have control over the operation of the league. They have no vote for the commissioner or the leadership of Riot Esports. They just get dictated everything to them, which means that the people leading League of Legends esports are always at odds fundamentally with the teams, because the teams want to be a real business partner and want to, they want a slice of the pie. And those people's jobs, they are trying to climb the corporate ladder and show that they can make as much money for the company as possible, which is not possible if they actually have team interests in mind.
Problem is, I've always said Sauron doesn't share power. I told some of those owners in the last 10 years, especially the first few years where I thought they might listen, and they would always sort of tell me, no, you don't understand. Like, Riot wants to partner with us. They're not a good people there, and they have the best interest. Well, here's the thing. You've lost $30 million now. You took all that VC and you've lost $30 million doing that. Was it worth it? Because here's the thing. Never mind profit. Can I at least get close to breaking even? Can we do that? That's a start. That's why, by the way, probably the biggest black pill for me that fans will never learn is, bro, to this day, they put out reports claiming like G2's profitable and stuff. And fans lap it up. And they go, well, of course, they're huge and they win LEC. And I bought a jersey. And you go, you haven't even run the basic numbers. Get a fucking napkin, you idiot. How could they ever have made that? You must be able to gauge what Caps' salary are. You must be able to guess these things. You must know what Monacy must get paid in CS. Like, you have no brain if you think these things. But anyway, thing is, Monty, that's obviously... It's feast and famine, and it's very much famine in the LCS. So let's talk instead about the good things in the LCS, like Team Liquid. They're a great team, and they remind me of HelloFresh because they provide me with actual sustenance, good planning. They understand at each stage what they want to do. They know when to ramp it up, and they give me real substance. It's not just, cheap calories and just some E numbers in my mouth. It's actually real hearty materials. So we have got HelloFresh back, haven't we? America's #1 meal kit. Because with HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-proportioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered where? Not into a shop, right to your doorstep. It's skip trips to the grocery store. If you're a gamer, you don't want to take any time out of your schedule. And count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. So you don't have to search for a recipe, or obviously the problem with all the Gen Alpha is they don't want to buy loads of ingredients, and they're like, but I'm not going to use much of that one, and then I haven't got the other thing here, and then, it says these other two things, so what I'll do is I'll substitute that out, and I'll just put like carrots in or something, and you mess up the whole thing. No, the best thing about this, by the way, is they send you exactly the ingredients you want, pre-proportioned as well. You make the meal. By the way, literally, you just follow the instructions. And actually, because they give the secret I found personally is because they give you all the instructions. Even if you're not that good, well, the real secret to cooking is the spices and the little extra thing. And actually, don't substitute that thing for a worse thing. And if you do it exactly as they say, even if you're not super slick at cooking, maybe this is actually your chance to learn. Maybe you want to graduate from the factor meals where it's the one that you put in the microwave. Maybe now you start doing this. And actually, I can tell you, I've had a bunch of them where I was a noob at cooking, and I definitely didn't look for me like at the end things should on the paper, but it tasted good because it would have like the sour cream or the little like extra thing of some sort of spice or something I wouldn't have had myself, and I would never go and buy that from the store. So they're easy to customize. You can get the ones with protein, veggie swaps depending on what you're doing. Obviously, if you want a bit of beef, maybe you're Cloud9, there you get the protein angle. If you're FlyQuest, a lot of vegans over there, vegetarian options for you at a point in time. You're in amongst the trees. Don't forget to check out the HelloFresh Market, which has more add-on items, jazz up your weekly deliveries. You can choose from a variety of menu options to suit all your needs and tastes, from fit and wholesome to quick and easy, or vegetarian to family friendly. There's something for everyone to enjoy. And as I say, I actually have used these services before. I actually think if you're someone who isn't mega at cooking, it's really good, actually. It's not something where you have to be really next level. It's actually fun to learn. So for free breakfast for life, go to hellofresh.com/free LFN. You get one free breakfast item per box while subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life just by going to hellofresh.com/free LFN. It is America's #1 meal kit.
Yeah, I've used it for a long time myself and very much enjoyed it. So,
and shout out to anyone who does use it. First of all, enjoy it. Hopefully you learn some cooking skills. You can even show off to people. By the way, here's the pro tip. Just keep the recipe card at the end. And then in the years from now, you could still know how to do something like really looking fancy. And someone will be like, wow, what a great job. And then you can even actually be honest and just go, I'm not much of a cook myself, but I'll learn a few. And that'll seem like you're downplaying it. And you'll seem actually like sort of suave and mysterious. And actually it'll give you a little social cachet maybe you didn't have before. Make you seem like there's hidden depths there,
Very good. I love it. Let's talk about LCS, actual LCS games this week, because, oh boy, Thorin, did we have some terrible LCS games.
I'm going to say moratorium on Dom and all the streamers saying LEC is total shit. You mean Team Liquid games are better than LEC. The rest of them are a fucking nightmare. Are you kidding me right now? Are you mental? By the way, Team Cloud9 can play just as bad as Fnatic. I don't know what we're even talking about at this point in time. And once you go below that, by the way, holy fuck. Like once you go to that Dig, FlyQuest, 100 Thieves, that level is nightmare fuel, mate. Like, it's one of those times when I almost wish we had the older LCS format because there's too many shit games. Like, I love Double Limb, but man alive, is it a slog with these teams?
I mean, I don't love Double Limb in the LCS, especially when we're getting 60% of the league still in the playoffs. I mean, well, actually, it's more than that. just kidding. There are only 8 teams in the LCS now, and 6 of them, so 6 of them get into playoffs. Just like, well, not quite as many by percentage as 8 out of 10 before, but you know, I mean, it's still pretty ridiculous, Thorin. Like when we're looking at this, and obviously, like Dignitas was coming in as the higher seed, but I mean, they certainly fooled a lot of people as to their status within this league. And, you know, Dignitas is very interesting to me because they swapped out most of the team heading into summer split. And obviously we're willing to spend at least some amount of money to do this, because I don't think some of these players probably would have played for league minimum. So Dignitas was trying to throw, you know, a certain amount of money around. And we've been over before how the LCS teams
surely don't, though, you know. Like, surely some like him's getting a decent wage.
Yeah, and the LCS team's stipends went up this year. They're going down next year, don't worry. And so a lot of teams were able to pay players like pretty halfway decently, not the outrageous amounts that some players were getting previously, but like you can make a good like couple $100K, and you know the teams are still profitable after the stipend and after you pay for coaches and housing and everything like that. So you know what these Dignitas guys are making, who knows? But like you look at this roster and they started out strong because it was a bunch of veteran players, but there is no real identity to this team at the end of the day. I think a lot of their drafts have been like really quite bad. They seem like super reliant on specific champions and will pick them almost no matter of the circumstances. I mean, even the regular season, we saw Dignitas go up against Team Liquid, and they literally picked Kalista into Cassiopeia, which is probably one of the most nightmare champions for Kalista to deal with, but they really just like having Kalista in that bot lane no matter what, and fuck it. It doesn't matter if she's going to hit Cassiopeia in a fight in the mid game and then not be able to move and take a bazillion damage from Cassiopeia. I guess that doesn't really matter to them. But Dignitas, man, like even like Licorice, who was doing very well last year and then had to split off, he was very bad in this playoff series. Jensen was absolutely miserable. He just can't adapt at all to, I would say, any new champions, but especially like this AD carry mid meta. Like this has been deeply unkind to him. And I mean, Sven has looked like pretty good at times, but I would say he's like the bright spot out of the veterans on this roster. And there isn't any like core identity to this team. And it was just sad. It was sad to watch them, and 100 Thieves just completely bowled them over from the laning phase. I mean, Jensen like dying at level 1 in a Zeri Smolder matchup. What the fuck is that? How is that even remotely acceptable?
Oh.
You know, and
well,
I also
the thing is, I agree with you. The biggest problem in this team is you look at the names and you're like, bro, you only need like 2.5 players to turn up. They're going to be good. Sometimes they all don't turn up. It's actually wild. They're almost like fool's gold. Like you look at the roster, you think, come on, this should surely be the 3rd or 4th best team. But actually, they never have actually looked good so far. They've never got it together. They just flat to deceive at the beginning of the split, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those teams that came out really hot because they have a bunch of veteran players. But I mean, these players, it is difficult to watch Jensen these days because his play is it's been abysmal. Like it's been pretty bad the entire time since he's like came back from his break, and he's never really found his groove or his ability to like widen his champion pool and be a competitive mid laner. I mean, it's going to take a miracle.
By the way. The problem he has is this. For me, he's always gone into that Froggen category where it's like you're a bit uncoachable because you didn't need to be coached. You were just the guy who did your style, you did your job, you're one of the best. In fact, you're usually a league MVP. And so what happens is if you join a team, people sort of learn. There's no point even complaining about him in the VOD review. He does his thing, and then we sort of like take the compromise and we do what we can, and then we try and help the team win, and he's the carry. The problem with players like that is when they're not the main carry and they're not the best anymore, they actually tend to be quite bad. I've found at taking like coaching advice and actually changing up their game. They're not going to like transform their game and roam all of a sudden, or to be the guy who maybe I just play safe and I don't gamble in lane, I don't go for the kills, etc. So I think that's one of the problems is you've seen over these last few years, he's not him anymore. And he's still sort of, I don't know, You can never tell from interviews. They're all good at interviews now. You can never really tell. Does he still think he is? Is he delusional? Is he one of these people who makes, does he know he's doing badly? You can't really get a sense. I think they're a bit inscrutable in that sense.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like, I think this team is just a mess, and it's a bummer because it feels like Dignitas really actually wanted to try, and that this is the result. But I will say that the GMing for Dignitas, even when they have spent money, has always been really off. And they haven't.
Garbage.
Yeah, we haven't put it, even when they've like been willing to spend at least
even
on
when they
some
sign
level.
players, it's like this. The roster never works. You know what I mean? They've had rosters that were okay. Remember that one with like Afro Moon, Froggen, and fucking Hooney? Like, that's all looked good, but it didn't work. It didn't work.
Yep. So I don't know, man. Like, I don't think this org, I think this means that the org probably isn't going anywhere, because I don't think you sign a roster like this if you are planning to leave LCS. I think it's much more likely that 100 Thieves and Immortals end up leaving, especially because, interestingly, I was actually listening to an interview on a podcast with Nadeshot, the Colin and Samir podcast, which is a podcast about kind of like content creators on the internet. And Nadeshot on there actually says basically if he could go back in time, he wouldn't have gotten 100 Thieves involved in esports, which is a totally reasonable take, by the way.
Yeah.
But
think about
basically,
the fucking facility bill. Oh, it's stupid as fuck. They hinted it right at the height of esports, basically.
Yeah.
I'm sure if he just made it a merchant streamer influencer company, he'd probably just be making hand over fist.
Well, especially because he got insanely lucky that Valkyrie happened to be like the fastest growing content creator in the world. Yeah. So I mean, even just having her and like having her blow up under the 100 Thieves banner and Courage as well, and himself obviously too, you have to think there was probably a better way they could have done things, but they got jammed into the esports business because of his background as an esports pro player and as a Call of Duty professional and a guy who owned a Call of Duty team prior to franchising. But yeah, I mean, if that's the kind of sentiment that he's expressing now, I find it difficult to believe that he's going to turn down another opportunity at probably a bigger paycheck from Riot than the last one to kick these, you know, when these teams get kicked out of the league. So, yeah.
No, if people don't know, the other reason I would be very worried if I were you about the fucking 100 Thieves as an LCS team is obviously they haven't had many good lineups since they had the one that was making all the finals, the FBI one, the Abadagi one, the Closer one. And if you go back and you look, like in VALORANT, they're just like an all right NA team. They're not one of the best teams. Don't have a CS team, even though CS2's out. As far as I know, it's only like CDL and games I don't care about that they're even in or give a fuck about. So it looks to me like they're ready to just like gradually fucking chop off all these limbs, mate, and just go back and just not be even in esports, which would be totally justified. It's like the TSM one. If you really make all this money from your other business and esports is a side business, at this point, it's not a side business, it's a fucking tumor, mate. Cut it off. Yeah. Cut it off and just have the healthy part, live and succeed.
Yeah, and like I don't blame TSM from a business perspective for getting out of LCS. I think that was 1,000% justified from their perspective, because again, it's not possible to have Riot Games as a business partner because they do not behave like a partner. It's not a partnership. It's a dictatorship that you are part of. And when you're the dog on the floor that they decide to throw scraps to occasionally, but you have no say over anything.
It's like some trickle down Reaganomics. That's how Riot Esports works. You just have to hope at the end, except you know the joke. There's a lot of political cartoons where like you just get a drip at the end of their glass just gets bigger and bigger and bigger to accommodate more of the wine, you know. So like that's Riot Games for you.
The funny thing about this whole thing is like there's only two options, right? One of which is that the entire esports program has been run by complete buffoons the entire time. In which case,
we're gonna allow a possibility for that. We'll give that a solid like 40% possibility. Okay.
Which means that like, why have they not fired these people and like retooled everything? Because they just keep on. I mean,
upwards at Riot, mate. It's crazy.
You'll notice that they actually promoted John Needham to he's not even just the head of esports anymore. Now he's doing publishing things as well. And to be fair, he comes from a game publishing background at like Activision Blizzard, I believe. And he was actually in publishing at Riot before he moved to esports. But it's like now he has even less time to deal with esports. So, these people just don't get fired. So I have to assume, Thorin, that they are actually just making a bunch of money and hiding it. That's what I have to assume, unless they're completely stupid. Because that's the only thing that makes sense.
In the modern day, you would think their paymasters at Tencent would have told them you have to fire people if they weren't actually doing the numbers and they were just losing money hand over fist. They wouldn't be allowed to. The joke in Riot is this. As far as I can tell, if you join Riot Games and you get to the C-suite level, your job is no longer get performance, get certain metrics, succeed in any traditional sense. It's just to know who's an alcoholic, who's fucking messaging someone who's underage, who's the guy who did a coke binge during a certain trade show. If you know that information, you have got your next promotion secured, as far as I can tell, allegedly in a video game Minecraft.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just, it is just basically esports has become a vehicle for people to be tourists to promote themselves within the company to other positions. Like, I don't think anybody who's an executive at esports wants to just stay in esports forever. This isn't their dream job. Their dream job is to be in the actual C-suite of Riot. Right? They don't want to be in the C-suite of the esports division. And so they're just going to do everything that they can to make themselves look good and the Riot esports look good for themselves. And they don't really care about solving the problems that the teams have. They don't really care. And not only that, but I think they realize, Thorin, that League of Legends, I don't think it's going to die tomorrow, but it is inarguable that this game is declining in terms of its new user base. Like, sure, still going fine in China and Korea, but even people in Korea, like Arnold Hoare has been tweeting and saying, we are having a hard time getting, kids into our development programs. So not like tier 2, but like tier 3 and 4, that all of those kids are not, no longer really playing League of Legends. So beyond kind of like the 17, 18-year-olds that are training in the academy programs right now, there's nobody underneath that any longer. And that's going to be a big issue because the barrier to entry of 170 fucking champions is too high in this game. And there is no onboarding process because Riot never bothered to build one within the game. There is no learning process for new players. You just get thrown in with a bunch of Smurfs, and the average age of the players continues to get older and older, and therefore smaller and smaller as people eventually quit the game on the whole. So I don't even think they want to fix the problems, Thorin. I think they're just going to kind of slowly sail this off into the sunset and worry about esports with VALORANT and other new games that they make in the future.
Another angle people won't think about is this. This could also just all be the distracting, shiny thing in one hand as you continue to loot the fucking esports with the other hand. Because here's why you do all these things, Monty. They're token gestures to team orgs, so they don't all ask to leave the league and get their 6 million and fuck right off. This is what you do to keep the bigger ones in. It's called sunken cost fallacy. You make them think, well, I'm making a bit more, and they are doing some initiatives, and you don't ever bother to scale up the numbers and go, wait a minute, it can never reach what I need it to, even if I did it 10 years. It just keeps you in for 2-3 more years, and maybe that's all they need to make their cynical number of main game sales and main skin sales and keep people watching for worlds and all that jazz. Maybe that's how you do it. I don't even know that this is actually a good faith gesture, quite frankly. At this point, I'm too cynical.
Yeah. Well, anyway, back to Dignitas, who I think will be probably staying in the LCS and not taking this money to leave. But I mean, like, this is just this team is just, the encapsulation of the LCS. And, I'm not even going to be upset, Thorin, when this goes down to 6 teams. My question is, are there even 6 teams worth of competitive talent within the LCS? Kind of hard to argue after watching teams 3 through 6 this week, right? Because these aren't even the worst teams that we could cut out. Remember, these playoffs are the number of LCS teams or North American teams that are supposed to exist for next year. And we're getting gameplay of this quality. Like, surely this can't be the best that we could have on offer. I mean, again, credit to 100 Thieves. They came in, they had Tomo, who is formerly of Dignitas, wanted his revenge. Like, Meech had to take a mental health break, I guess. So they bring in Tomo, and they actually are, clean sweep this series in some very convincing games, mostly off of like River and Quid's performance. But I don't think anybody looks at 100 Thieves and thinks, wow, this is such a great team. They're going to have a very serious and deep run within these playoffs. It's just that Dignitas is so washed that it was an easy victory. Still, I'm still surprised it was a 3-0, though.
If you want to know some interesting secret info about Quid's career before this team, watch the Best Damn League show. I won't tell you what anymore, but you'll just find out some very interesting info. You'll also find out a bunch of little secret behind the scenes thing, and you'll find out how stupid Europeans and fucking European pro players are. Like, spoiler, I've told this story before, but it's actually revealed on the show who it was. I'll tell you I'll drop a little hint right now. There was literally a European team before he was even on T1 who had scouted and could have signed Zeus, and the pro players told the coach, how do we get a Korean? Just get this European player. They didn't get him. He would have been an LEC.
Amazing.
That's real. Yeah, no, Quid's another person anyway. You'll find out on the episode. It'll be coming up soon. Let's see who the not Dom is. You don't know yet.
Well, I think though that in Quid's case, like I did complain that like people weren't talking about why he's the MVP and like his fall off and everything like that and his individual performance.
Good mechanics, that's the thing.
I mean, he came to play in this series, like credit where it's due. Like they were always propelled by River and Quid, basically dictating the pace of the game and Sniper getting some solo kills on the top side because their bot lane was very terrible. But Dignitas just has no cohesive way of playing, and they Dignitas just digs themselves into such enormous holes. Like it's just impossible to escape from. Even if you do have veteran knowledge and shot calling, like they are just so thoroughly outclassed everywhere. It feels like. I don't even know where you go with this roster. Like, how many of these players are just probably, I mean, I hope some of them just fucking retire at this point in time, because I can't deal with another stage of Jensen unless he actually finds his motivation again. I think Jensen can still be a good player. There's nothing physically or mentally about him that's holding him back from being good. It just feels like he doesn't care. Feels like he doesn't care.
I just wonder what his morale is, mate. Put it this way. Here's the thing. When Jensen was at his best was when, one, he was on an absolute contender every split. Two, he usually actually had players he wanted to play with that he requested, and they would join like a jungler or something. And then three, when he actually had reasons to be super motivated. One, he had an enormous contract back then. Two, he wanted to beat people like Bjergsen. He wanted to make a deep run at Worlds. These were things, right? Right now, none of those things exist, Monty. His contract's way lower than it ever was. He's not on a top team. There's no Bjergsen. There's no one really to give a shit about in that. Like, listen, APA isn't what Bjergsen was. That's not like trying to contest yourself against some generational player. And even if you miracle made it to Worlds, with the current format, you would just get banged out immediately 0-3. It wouldn't even fucking matter. So at that point in time, yeah, unfortunately, this is one area I give a lot of credit to pro athletes. I've always been very impressed, Monty, about how the people who are at the end of their Hall of Fame career, like the NFL, even when they're on a shit team, they just put in a good season still. They sort of understand like the individual legacy matters still, and I want to round it out. I think in league, you see a lot of these people, they get to the end and they go, I could just coast a bit. You know what I mean? Do half as much work, still get a bit. Look, the reason why you keep playing is obvious, Monty. It's still better than going and getting some office job in Denmark. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Getting like 6 figures or something. So yeah, why not? Like, do it as a job. But I tell you what, the second you do your passion as a job, you are understandably going to get way worse at it.
Yeah. Look, I think it's like they don't. Unfortunately, the reality of being a pro athlete or a pro gamer is that you spend a lot of, your educational years and early years in your career doing this, to the point where what do you do when you're done, right? If how old is Jensen now? He's almost 30, probably, right?
He must be up there. Let's see. He's 29.
Yeah, he's almost 30. Like, I have no idea if he's been to university. Like, I don't think so, because
come on, there's no way. He couldn't have.
He started playing like 2012 when he was like 17 years old. So yeah, I mean,
exactly.
And like there was the whole thing where he couldn't be a pro player for a while before of that because of the DDoSing issue. So he was like a coach for a while. But, this guy doesn't have a formal education. And I'm sure he's quite smart and we can all go to school later. But, that's basically delayed the start of his career. So, I don't blame him for continuing to play, because he's maximizing his earning, because he's going to have to hit a reset at some point in time. He's not like a well-known streamer or anything who's going to seamlessly slide into content creation.
There's another thing very stupid that all the giant names in NA did. every one of them, I'd say from about 2016, 17 onwards, should have had someone who helped them set up their own store, Jensen.gg, and it sells t-shirts and fucking, you know, displays of them holding the trophy and fucking a special customized colored mouse. It should have had all, that should have been years ago. I mean, people like Doublelift left millions on the table from that, mate. Bjergsen, God only knows. Instead, you were just promoting a shitty TSM jersey. Like, that's wild to me.
Yeah. I mean, there've been a lot of mistakes made. But yeah, I think that's why they continue to do it, because you know what? Even if you can't make the $700,000 a year you used to, you can still make $200,000 a year now, and that's still better than anything else you can do. But that also goes to show that the value of actual pro players is dropping precipitously, because now the market is correcting into what are these pro players actually capable of earning.
It was always insanely inflated. So yeah, unfortunately, this is totally appropriate. Yeah.
And it's still, you know,
this
it
is
turns
what
out it's still a good living.
When the VC pipe gets turned off, yeah, of course it is, Monty. Hey, remember, because it is way better than an office job always to do this gig. That's why people used to go, actually, instead of making 30K in an office job, I'll do this for 15K. That was real. That was esports 10, 11 years ago. The point is, if you can even hit six figures, you have an incredible living. You play a fucking kid's video game.
And not only that,
I don't think people realize if you're in Europe, like you'd have to be like the CEO of like a regional of Lego to make like 500K or 600, 250K, mate. And in fact, even then they'd probably give you the 200K and like a Jeep and, you know, fucking shit like that. Like they wouldn't give you $1 million. They wouldn't give you 900K, some ridiculous figure.
It's also that the LCS minimum, Thorin, is $75,000. And everybody's like, oh, that's such a small amount of money to live in LA. Yeah, if you had to pay for your own house, but you don't have to pay for your apartment. The team pays for that. You don't have to pay for your food. It is just $75,000 of no living expenses. They pay for your insurance, right? They pay for your transportation to work. They pay for fucking, they have a chef that's catering food to you at your job. It is cushy as fuck.
Bro, to this day, that's one area I can't believe how stupid the average Redditor is. But it's weird. There's people have asked me questions like, when you go to the CS event, do they pay your airfare? Like, what are you even talking about, you mad cunt? No, fucking pay all myself and then hope I make some money. What are we talking about? Like, that was obviously always covered. Bro, that was covered since 2013. Like, why would that be a question in 24? What are we doing? No, mate, anyone who says that line, you're a moron. It's 75K, take out the taxes. The rest is pure profit to you. You get like 40K to the dome. You can just put that in fucking mutual fund. Do whatever you want with it, mate. There's another thing, by the way. I will say also, if you were people like Doublelift, I hope you literally put $1 million in the stock market, S&P. If you didn't, you are an utter brain-dead cretin. So sadly, I think I can guess that one. He probably had crypto, let's be real. He probably had crypto. He probably had a shit coin. Lift coin or whatever, and it probably crashed. Why hasn't he done that? Rug pulled his own fans. It'd be about half of the course at this point in time, wouldn't it?
We should talk about NRG as well, because they're the other team that look. Dignitas was a bit of a surprise in the crash and burn department. Like, obviously, you know, credit to 100 Thieves. They came in. I would have expected Dignitas to win that matchup, particularly because obviously bet on veterans in the playoffs, right? Not some of the younger guys or less experienced guys that are 100 Thieves. Now, NRG, they go up against FlyQuest. And FlyQuest, of course, they have Quad, but at least Quad has like been improving in terms of his performance. And I think Quad, unlike Thanatos, has actually meshed with the team very nicely. FlyQuest just happens to have other problems. And NRG, man, this is the team, Thorin, that we were told, oh boy, here comes NRG, the great defeaters of G2, last year's summer split champions. Where the fuck are these guys? Like, they look like bums outside of Contracts. Like, Contracts looks okay, but everybody else is playing absolutely terribly.
You know the reason why? It's called regression to the mean. They weren't even that good when they won that summer split. They didn't dominate. So what's mad is they had one tournament ever where they did what? Have like 4 BO3s where they had one they were insane in, a couple they were pretty good in, then get their heads kicked in by Weibo and go home. Like, people made it sound like they had a whole year run. It's always the worst thing about Worlds, that it defines your whole year. If you do a run at the end, you were geniuses. If you do a shit run at the end, you were bums, even if you won all the splits back home. They never were that good. If you were the guys out there crowing, wow, you thought Contracts and Parler Fox were world class. Yeah, it's not my first rodeo, pal. Like,
Well,
first of all, the worst one about that was the contracts one. If you haven't watched him play his whole career and you actually thought he was going to like Giga Smurf on everyone for years, what the fuck are you talking about? He was always an insanely high variance player. Always, his whole career.
yeah, and also I think you have to put it into context too, what it meant to win LCS that year, because you're dealing with basically the insane collapse of FlyQuest, right? Because part of that was they got Prince like coming off his peak on Live Sandbox. Who did they hire? World Championship winning coach Song. Vikla, who is one of the most promising rookies within the LCK. They got impact guys. They even got Vulcan in the summer split to try and fix their issues. Like Spica, who is a former LCS MVP player. This was not supposed to be a roster that sucked, and yet they didn't even make playoffs. So right there, you have a giant bonus to NRG when it came to how they were going to potentially perform, because a roster that spent big and was supposed to be very good just didn't show up. And then who are your opponents, right? First off, NRG got banged out by C9 in the upper bracket final, and then they come back. By the way, who are the solo lanes for C9? M&S and Fudge. Where are those guys now? Where are those guys now? This year, 1 year later, where the fuck are M&S and Fudge? You know what I mean? Like, this was a roster that was super weak.
Everyone was talking about, should Fudge be on or not? He can't get on any other team. What are we doing? I've always said that. It's the same thing in CS, Monty. You'll even know some of these narratives just because they're drifted through the ether. You know, the whole thing in G2, for a whole year we raged, should Huxley be in G2? Should he not? Right, he's not in G2 anymore, Monty. Not a single other team wants him, and no fan wants him in any team. So that was all a fake discussion the whole time. Same thing with Fudge. We just wasted 2 years, 3 years on this guy. I mean, it's more than it was about 5 years or something mental, wasn't it? Like, he had a couple that he was good. No, what a waste of fucking time. By the way, M&S was a mechanically extremely talented. It's just everyone knew that was a rep of him the whole time. He's a dickhead. Everyone knew that.
Tilted super hard.
Supposedly in Europe, he could have been in a bunch of LEC teams. What happened is people would go, wait a minute, you're signing M&S, I'm not joining your team. That's how it worked in the off seasons. So
well,
it's outrageous.
He would also just tilt and run it down in games. And play absolutely miserably. So
yeah, because he's a cunt. He continues to show it on Twitter to this day. By the way, another reason why NRG isn't good, I'm not going to spare anyone. Bro, there was a period up until last year where I actually think FBI was one of the most underrated LCS players ever. He actually had a really long... He was the main reason 100 Thieves was good, by the way. He was like the engine of that team. He was actually very mechanically pretty good. He used to also be awesome in lane with Hui. You had this run of probably 3-4 years where he was good. You can go back to Golden Guardians. That was the bot lane that was winning you the games as well. Everyone looked at Closer because he played the Lee Sin, but it was because of their bot lane. Their bot lane was what made them win those games. He has had a fucking terrible fall off. He's probably had the worst year of his entire career so far. He's looking really, really bad, and he's back with Hui even. So, what can you say? It's absolute shit. This lineup's just fucking garbage. Who cares, mate? Who gives a fuck anymore?
Well, even when they come into this series, they pick the Scion, right? And you think, oh, are they going to do some kind of like Scion cheese? No. Just like weak siding, oh, you can't dive the Scion in the lane swap.
Oh, fuck. I saw a Scion, so I assumed I was doing the lane swap. Oh, no.
Every time you see a Scion
on,
they did do the lane swap.
Every time you see it, you know it's a lane swap. What are you talking about, Monty? They'll bring that back. Don't worry. We'll get some justice for that. It'll come soon. Don't worry.
Yeah, I mean, look, like it wasn't any kind of cheese. It wasn't any like tri laning. I thought they would, for game one of a best of 5 in playoffs, I think, oh, spicy. Maybe you have something. No, it's just like it's hard to dive him and he can still get the wave even if you kill him. That was the like extent of the planning. No, they couldn't lane because they were in
meta. You can play Scion, but that's almost just giving up in this meta. Think how many strong carries there are, how many fucking sick picks you can pick in top lane. That's almost just like your concession. Like he's not playing well at the moment.
It's quiet quitting. It's quiet quitting.
Yeah.
And it's just like Palafox really struggles with carrying leads from an AD carry mid meta. His positioning is really weird on a lot of the ADs. He's getting caught out on the flank a lot of the time. His play has been very underwhelming. Hui seems disinterested in the game and engages at very strange times. Like you say, FBI is, he's frequently caught out or mispositioned within team fights.
He gets fuck all kills, by the way. It's a nightmare.
So I don't really understand how NRG could fall off like this hard. I mean, we said they peaked really hard at Worlds last year, and they did have some very legit games versus G2. I'm not taking that away from NRG. NRG played very well. They played the best games of their lives in that series versus G2 at Worlds, and it took them to a quarterfinal. They earned it, right? They played super well, but it was unlikely they were going to be able to maintain that form. But the fact that they can't even be mildly competitive is
they earned the win for
disturbing.
G2. They didn't earn the top 8. The rest of them were bullshit draws. They had, by definition, one of the easiest. Everything else was just Western teams. They got to play bomb-ass teams like fucking, what was it, like TL, Mad Lions and shit. What's that guy? Or what the fuck is that? That's nothing, mate.
Yeah.
So they didn't earn top 8. That was always Fugazi. But you can't control who you draw. So yes, with a very lucky draw, they made top 8. Okay, congrats. That's why I'm saying, think about it, Monty. So in summer, you barely won the split, especially when some of those teams were nightmare rosters that, by the way, completely dismantled immediately after that year. Then at Worlds, you got almost the easiest draw. Then you had one best of 3 where you played awesome. You made top 8 irrelevant. Bro, this is the high end of your variance. What the fuck's it going to be like when it normalizes? It's going to be like this. You're going to be the 5th best team in the LCS. That actually seems appropriate. And then you have to add in that whole angle of we have all those coaches. Well, fucking Demonte's over in FlyQuest. Some of the positional coaches aren't there anymore. Like, well, what do you want? You dismantled the one thing that was maybe, like, remember, a bit like BDS. If your strength's the coaching staff, you better keep the coaching staff. Otherwise, what have you got? You got nothing, mate. You've just got a bunch of mid-ass players. And by the way, Fox just doesn't even kill anyone anymore. He's playing all these champions I watched the LCK and LPL dominate on. He is fucking trash on Zeri, on Lucian. These are the players where it's like, mate, the Western regions are making themselves look like fools in this ADC meta. Loads of them just can't play them. Meanwhile, everyone wants to talk shit on LEC. I'll tell you what, big boy core streamers who think LCS is better as a region, go watch Jackie's playing ADC mid. Then come back and you line up LCS mids and tell me how many of them are good on it. You got what, 2.5? Give me a fucking break. You got out, mate. You got out. You'll do now. You'll do nothing.
If we switch over to FlyQuest, I mean, I'm not super encouraged by FlyQuest, but I will say, like, some positive things about FlyQuest development. First off, I think Masu and Quad's synergy is actually very good, and Masu has been performing, increasingly well. I think for a rookie player, he's had a very strong performance. Sure, Masu and Busio make mistakes in the bot side and they get killed, but Masu, game 3 especially, when he was playing the Ashe and setting up plays for the shuffles for Quad on his ear, it was very clean. He was hitting a lot of long range arrows, looked really good. The other thing is, Busio seems to have at least calmed down his nerves, because if you guys remember, he would just completely shit the bed last playoffs and at MSI and play completely horribly, but he's actually like making plays somewhat on this roster. The issue, I think, primarily is like Whippo's desire to play this weird champion pool, including
what do you think of the volley bear?
I think it's terrible. I mean, look, I understand why you would pick this pick, all right? So you're looking to get some kind of edge on Renekton. Okay, we're going to take the Volibear. Now, Volibear Viego is extremely strong as a 2v2. But one of the key issues is if you don't get ahead on the Volibear, you get lit up by Lilia. Anybody who's jungled Volibear knows that it's a fucking nightmare to play into jungle Lilia, because she kites you and you can never actually do anything to her, particularly when you don't have flash. So it becomes very, very difficult for the Volibear to actually do anything in the mid and late game, especially with CC coming out of Jhin or Leona or Renekton or Lilia, right? Because very, very hard, because you're not going to close that gap. Now, if you can get an advantage and you can start split pushing and you can actually create threat and you can say, start a Viego reset chain, then maybe you have an opportunity to do something as the Volibear. But he was dying basically from the get-go, and there's not much you can do. And like, this is what you get to see the best and worst of Whippo in this series, even in just the first 2 games. Game 1 gets an advantage on Cassante. Whippo is really good at snowballing leads. He's really good at pushing his advantage because he wants to make plays. And when he has advantages, he will make plays, he will create pressure, he will get kills, he will start the team fights. He's great. The problem with Whippo is that when he's behind, he plays like he's ahead. He can never lose gracefully. He can never minimize impact.
He's an ego player, man.
He has to be the hero. So what happens is the plays he makes, he will make the engage whether he's 2,000 gold up or 2,000 gold behind. Except in one, his team will be able to follow up and he's going to dominate somebody. And the other one, he's going to die before his team gets there. And then his team's at a disadvantage. Bwipo is the main character of all of Bwipo's games. And like, that's not how top lane works. Like, Keen is the guy you want in top lane, who's the one who selflessly plays. Sure.
By the way, this isn't even who Bwipo was in Europe, bro. In Europe, when he played with people like Reckless and Nemesis, he did sublimate his ego in behalf of letting those people carry the game. Yeah, I actually thought people like Mithy must have loved coaching. This guy actually seemed like a guy who did what he needed. Obviously, fucking jungled when he needed to make it work and taught Adam simultaneously how to play fucking top lane. Like, he only became this player when he came to NA. It's like a mixture of that Worlds where his secret coach activated, who must be the worst fucking hype man of all time, Lady Macbeth Part 2. You should meet Lena. You should have a little fucking witch's coven. And then he came over to NA, got that enormous fucking LCS contract for Team Liquid. And ever since then, I agree with you, he's tried to be the main character constantly. He thinks he is the joke is, this is the sort of person back in the day who would criticize how the Shy plays. Bro, the Shy at least was a god when he did that stuff. You're Bwipo and you're doing that.
Well, it's also just unnecessary because I think the frustrating thing, if you're a FlyQuest fan, is that there have been a lot of mistakes made by the bot lane this season. And people who want to blame Inspired literally just go back and count the games where Inspired has an advantage and Masu and Busio do something extremely stupid in bot lane and fuck up the entire map for Inspired. Like, it, you know, it's part of playing with younger players. It's fine. Like, these things happen. But Masu, it's like, there is some sort of fucking crisis happening on one side lane or the other in seemingly like all of FlyQuest's games. And it's like the variance that this creates in FlyQuest performance is astronomical because it feels like they can never, even if they have like a good level 1 or a good early game player, a good jungle pathing, or like are trying to eke out incremental advantages, somebody on this team needs to be the goddamn hero at any point in time and like try and pull off the biggest, sexiest play possible. And, you know, 50% of the time they just fall on their face while doing it. This is a team where it is impossible for them to not fumble a win. It feels like they have to throw it at some point in time, trying to make an even bigger win happen when it's like, no, just play the game of inches, right? Get the advantage, slowly snowball that advantage. But it's been very hard. To Masu and Busio's credit, it has been a lot better on their part recently, but Bwipo has been all over the place with his performances. And I think it really hurts the team, especially because it feels like Quad is actually meshing very well with this lineup, and Quad is very individually good. We've seen a really good development of Quad throughout the regular split, and it just seems a shame that we have to have the flippiness coming out of the top lane. Like, do we need to be fucking playing Darius without TP in this series? No, guys, like that shit ain't gonna work against the team. Yeah, but it's like against the team that knows how to play against a top laner with teleport. Because guess what? Did Bwipo get a huge lane lead? No. It was just NRG not understanding how to play the map and not abusing his lack of teleport and wandering around in the river and getting caught out. Like, Darius was a non-factor in the laning phase against Renekton, just a complete non-factor. And you have if Darius is a non-factor with no TP, then you're winning. You're winning, NRG. Like, split him off. Don't let him be coming to the team fight. Abuse the fact that you have teleport when you're able to. Play the mind games. Did they do that? No. So, I mean, it just feels really weird. It feels like FlyQuest kind of got away with the win here, but not because of their own strengths, you know. But
do you know what the worst thing is, Monty? This team, obviously right now, are the favourite to come third and go to Worlds. And bro, they're not even prepared. They're not even prepared for what they're going to get there.
It's probably going to look like BDS did last year. You know? We saw this team at MSI. I don't know, man. I think it's going to be a massive struggle for them. So really, I think that's even a factor that plays against them, Monty. Sure, it was with Jensen at MSI, but then they went to EWC. Dude, they've been to 2 international tournaments. Like, think of all the experience they've had, but they're trash. Yeah,
they just are.
Yeah, I think it's difficult. I think it's difficult to argue that. Like, they haven't accomplished anything. And like, the thing, Thorin, is we didn't even get to see, like, at least with Yun and APA, we got to see the glow up at MSI and beyond, right? Like we got to see something out of this team, whereas like FlyQuest lost to PSG and didn't even qualify for the bracket stage. Like PSG got 3-0'd by G2 in quarterfinals. Like this team is not even close. And like you say, not with this exact same roster. And I do think that this iteration of the roster is better, but it feels like there are just fundamental flaws in the way that these players want to play the game that are very difficult to address. And
also, here's an angle that is bad, in my opinion. If you sign a player like Quad, so a Korean mid laner playing his rookie split, yeah, let's just give him like a wonky ass support who's role swapped and fucking Bwipo as the top laner. Bro, I've never played this League of Legends. It's just a different game than what I installed. Like, I'm playing in fucking Korea, mate. Like, can I have real League of Legends? What is this?
I think Bwipo is also still using an import slot too. So
perfect. Brilliant.
Like his residency is still Europe because it's Inspired that I believe has switched his residency to America. But
that's a fucking travesty and half there, but whatever. It's luckily it won't matter. He can be the import to LEC when we bring him back. When finally he comes home, the prodigal son, and we embrace him and put him onto Fnatic or something, and go to Worlds and give him a title or two, then he'll just be an NA player. And we'll go, you know what? We'll fuck with y'all in the same way as you dickheads keep saying TL's an NA team. Well, it's just carried by Koreans. We'll go, well done, NA. You've got one player who made it to quarters at Worlds. We'll do that to you motherfuckers. Exactly. It wouldn't be the first time a Polish immigrant came to your country and built the motherfucker. History jokes there.
Actually good. All right, I'm done with LCS. I think this was just a shameful. Right. It was a shameful weekend of games, Thorin. And you know what?
We're waiting for the real games. We're waiting for Cloud9 TL. When that happens, we'll go crazy. Right, I want to talk about.
Wait! Before you do that, if you guys have been watching LCS and you are ashamed of perhaps having that tab open on your browser, well, you might be trying to watch LCS in incognito mode, like some other activities that our male-dominated audience might be enjoying on the internet. And if you're watching in incognito mode, you should understand that your shame is absolutely not being hidden from your ISP, by the way. They still have access to your entire history. And you know what they do with that history? That's right. They tend to sell it to other people. So I'll tell you what, maybe you should use an extra, level of protection that isn't just incognito mode and it's not visible to a bunch of third parties. If you're on a public network and you're in incognito mode, guess what? Somebody else might be looking at that as well. So why don't you be a little bit more careful? Sign up for ExpressVPN. Got a great app. You can hide all of that from your ISP, your mobile network provider, admins on your Wi-Fi network, anybody who's looking around on a public network as well. There you go. It reroutes all of your traffic through secure encrypted servers, so third parties can't see your browsing history. Also hides your IP address, and it's incredibly easy to use. I'm literally using it right now while we're streaming this show, so offers excellent download and upload speed at the same time. I use it on my phone basically 24/7 at this point in time. The app is amazing. You literally just turn it on, forget that it's on. It's great. It's rated #1 by top tech reviewers like CNET and The Verge. So protect your online privacy today by visiting expressvpn.com/summoning. That's expressvpn.com/summoning. And you can get an additional 3 months free. expressvpn.com/summoning. Thank you to ExpressVPN. All right. What do you want to talk about next?
Right. So obviously, since the regular season has ended, you did an episode of the Monty Wolf Show where you break down who the MVP is. And here's the thing. In general, I do think one thing I want to stop is this. When I give my opinion, I'm going to make it sound like who I pick should be it and that your pick shouldn't be it, right? That's the nature of disagreeing on opinion. But I do despise the notion you can mathematically show who the MVP is, or it's obvious and there's no debate. Like, I actually think, by the way, I despise in the NFL and NBA unfair that when you have those MVPs where it's like 100 out of 120 writers vote for one guy, it's like, what are we doing at this point? It's a team game. These are team games. It's not like StarCraft where if Stefano won everything, he has to be Western Player of the Year. Like, this is a team game. You have to ask things like, what style do they play? But if there's one thing I despise, Monty, it's when people switch their logic. So I have an angle, right, which is that Wolf, who, and I'm setting all this up because I think Wolf's a very interesting character, who has his own mind for the game and a history in esports people don't understand. So I'm not on the fuck Wolf hype train. Like, I think that's moronic. It's the same thing you all did to LS. It's the same thing you've all done to every fucking thinker in this game. You're doing it all to Monty because he hasn't casted in years and years. So Wolf has this take that I actually almost find inconceivable, even though I've listened to his reasons, which is, not only does he have Peyz as the MVP of the league, personally, I don't even think Peyz is the all first team ADC.
I don't either.
Never mind MVP. Then his second opinion is that the MVP is either Peyz or Canyon, and Chovy isn't allowed to be the MVP. Right, here's why I don't like that thinking, because I actually genuinely don't think, I think he's just decided, right, here's the reasons why Peyz could be, and he's gone with it. I don't think he's done what I would do, which is you think, what would your rationale for MVP be? And then you apply it, and by the way, if that means it's a result you don't like, that's your rationale, mate. You've gone with that. You either switch your rationale permanently, or you accept that you have a system. So my problem is there's two parts here, Monty. First of all, I just find that bizarre, because to me, if you're going to pick an MVP, assuming it has to be from Gen G, because they only lost one series, it's going to be Chovy or Canyon. They're the two obvious names to pick. If you're not doing that, the third person, actually, I made the point on all these past episodes, would be Aiming. He's like the far and away the biggest carry of any team that isn't Gen G. I mean, look, I think Viper skill-wise is a better ADC, but Aiming has to do everything on his team. His stats are fucking unbelievable. What he does in his squad with lesser pieces. And then lastly, so I've got two things to say here. One is I still haven't heard an argument anyone has made. What did Chovy do wrong? I don't get it. What did he do wrong that means he's not allowed to win? What is this? Because I'll tell you what, and I'm going to say this right now. If Faker played an identical game to Chovy, you would say it was 100% Faker was the MVP, and you'd give all the reasons that Chovy would get. Shot caller, main part, he's the mid laner, he plays the key champions, he's the one that's sustainable, he's the one that get. If Faker played this way, you would every person to a man, say he's the player of the year, he's the best player in the world, and he's the MVP of the league. Then secondly, I'm just going to put this out there. If people think, Thorin, how can you say Aiming? Maybe Viper's better. Isn't Chovy a better player? Doesn't he win more? I am sick and fucking tired of when it's not the player you like. Every single player in every region does this thing, Monty. They tell me, who do you think every year I have to hear is the MVP of the LEC? Guess.
Caps?
How could he ever be the MVP if you're using wins over replacement logic? By wins over replacement logic, Caps has never won an MVP, ever, except maybe one split where G2 was dodgy. Because logically, he has the best players, he's in the best team, and you could put another mid laner there and you could still win the league. So what doesn't make any sense at all is how anyone can use wins over replacement, but every fan does. Do you know how many times they've given the MVP to someone who was in like Quid? That's why he got it. He wasn't the best player in LCS, but I tell you what, 100 Thieves was a bit shit. The roster wasn't very good. He had to do way more than anyone else in the wins, so you gave it to him, right? If you're going to do this, if you're going to give MVPs to other people, because I personally am not like that. I would give Caps it 1,000,000 times. I would give Chovy it 1,000,000 times. I would give Rookie it 1,000,000 times. I would give Knight it 1,000,000 times, because they're the best player on the best team, and they're the best player in the league, in my opinion. Again, what did you do wrong? Is it my fault I have good teammates? If I have good teammates, how am I supposed to ever win MVP by that logic? So I just don't get this angle. Like, I don't get either side. I don't get the people who do the wins over replacement because they're ignoring that on this split. Aiming would be your MVP. But I'll tell you what, Aiming's unpopular, so people hate that take, bro. Aiming's not allowed to be in the class of Deft and Chovy and all the rest of those fuckers. Well, and then on the Chovy one, someone please explain, if I asked for a mid laner, what he is doing that doesn't mean he's the best player. Someone explain it to me.
I think the problem with Chovy, Thorin, is that you get that MVP fatigue problem that you have in traditional sports too, where it's like if somebody's been good for too long, people are like, yeah, but this season was like slightly worse than that other MVP season, so therefore they're not the MVP anymore, even though they're still the best player within the league, right? I think you get this in traditional sports and traditional sports voting, at least in like NFL, and I think NBA. NBA is pretty famous for that, isn't it?
Sure.
Because it's in the NBA.
Yeah, they want to give it to a different person every season, basically.
Yeah, basically in the NBA, because they're only 5 players on the court at any given time. It's a lot easier to continue to be the best player and like win a fuck ton of games if you are the best player in the NBA. Even if you're a quarterback in the NFL, it is just harder to do that. It's just harder to do that. I mean, NFL has other problems, such as like it's actually impossible to win the MVP if you're not a quarterback now, which is just ridiculous. But we'll go into that. But I think in the LCK place, I mean, I still had Chovy as MVP because he still had an outstanding season, even if it was lesser by his standards. I mean, what standard are we going to judge Chovy by? Like, he's number 1 in the league in like laning stats, CS difference at 10. Like, he's number 1 in CS per minute overall. He is towards the top of the list in terms of CS percentage after 15. And the only players ahead of him are Closer and Call Me, who are not even like on good teams. And Call Me played 1 game this split, guys. So it's not even, it's like Closer who's really ahead of him. He's way up there in damage percentage off of 15, but he, even as far as his team goes, he has a lot of great teammates. So he's going to have lower damage percentage as a result. Earned gold per minute. He's top of the league, right?
We're going to act like being the best farmer every single game is like just chopped liver. By the way, you all love Faker. Have him be the best farmer in the league. He couldn't do it. It's impossible.
I mean, he also has the lowest death percentage on his team of any. He has the lowest death percentage of any mid laner in the league who has started all the games this season. Calyx is lower than him, but Calyx played 6 games on Nongshim and Chovy played 38 games and has a 15% death share. Like, he doesn't, he wins lane. He fucking doesn't die. You can't kill him. He does a crap ton of damage. He pulls more gold out of the map than anybody else. And that, Thorin, that's before we even get into the motherfucking eye test. Let's just talk about the game that happened this week in a completely meaningless game that he played versus Hanwha Life. He dominated, and he did things on Tristana I didn't even know were possible, Thorin. I did not know you could buffer Poppy ult with Tristana W. I didn't even know you could do that. And he was doing it in this game. His mechanics are ridiculous. You want to see a pop-off Tristana game, go watch those 2 games. He is flat. He is like getting W resets, then W flashing into team fights to get another W reset and like cleaning up the fight. It is very impressive. And Tristana has, for, basically the entire time Trist has been meta, been one of his better champions. But he's doing shit in the mid lane. Nobody else. Who else is playing Draven? Who's out there playing Draven in the mid lane? You know what I mean? Like, he's doing wacky shit and he is pulling it off. Like, this guy is, I don't know how to say this. Guy's clear. He did win MVP, fortunately, so we don't have to have a scandal. Yeah. But he absolutely deserved it, I think. And as for your other point about aiming, so a few weeks ago, I was on the Viper hype train. Viper cooled off, like, over the last, like, 2-3 weeks. I think his performance has been worse. And I think
much to play for you. It's understandable, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there wasn't really a hope of getting first place. Like, the games were kind of meaningless.
They didn't have T1 to push them, so they knew they were always going to be second, mate.
Yeah, and D+ was, like, too far behind
and they
as well.
And they beat Gen G either, so it's not like they thought they were going to win that game either.
I mean, they actually just couldn't pass Gen G at a certain point in time. So I mean, these last few weeks have at least for Gen G and Hanwha Life, it's been very difficult to get reads on them because basically the last 2 weeks have been meaningless for both of them. So Viper hasn't looked so good, but Aiming, by the way, who did actually have things to play for, I don't even know what you want from this guy. Sure. Did Aiming play more games than any other AD carry in this league? Yes, he did. He played 45 games. Most players played around like 41, 42 because D+ went to a lot of game 3s. But even considering that he has 4 or 5 games above average and he has 7 more games than Peyz, he has 301 kills in a single split, which is first place by 107 kills. Peyz is 194. He's 301. That difference is absolutely enormous, considering he only played 7 more games.
Remember, LCK traditionally isn't even an ADC league in terms of carries. Like, that's actually, unironically, probably one of the best ADC splits ever played in LCK.
Yes. And Aiming also has been dominating his lane. And I will say, like, look, there's a lot of caveats to laning stats from ADCs. There's been a lot of Senna played, okay? Sure. Which affects your gold differential, especially Peyz, because Peyz plays a lot of Senna. There are things like lane swaps. Your propensity for doing lane swaps is going to affect you at some point, and your team's ability to execute those lane swaps in particular. But he has really dominated the laning phase relative to his other opponents. And yes, is he absolutely the highest economy AD carry player? Sure. I mean, that's just who he is. It's like who Prince was at the same time. Like, Aiming's been this way for years.
Look at the other ones, and they also are quite similar in terms of the amount of gold.
I mean, Viper's very like the thing about Peyz is that Peyz actually takes significantly less percentage of his team's CS because frequently Chovy is in a side lane, and Peyz also plays a lot of Senna, which is another reason why. So you do have to look at those kind of picks because the amount of Senna you play really affects the amount of, these statistics, especially like CS percentage taken. And Peyz has been a wonderful player. Don't get me wrong. Like but he is a role play. He is not the main character of Gen G.
That's why he plays Senna.
Yes,
put it this way, if he was aiming, he wouldn't be on Senna, would he? Think about it. If he was in D+, he wouldn't be on Senna.
I mean, I think he does what his team needs to win. He's an excellent role player.
Because you have Trophy, so why would you demand all the fucking picks?
Exactly. And you have Chovy playing 80 carry, and Chovy's fucking immense at playing 80 carries.
Yeah, you want all these guys on sick champions that dominate the game, AP junglers and stuff.
Yeah. So, like, I think in Aiming's case also, his value to his team was just significantly higher because you could put a lot... do you guys honestly think that Gen G would be substantially worse if Viper was on Gen G instead of Peyz? Do we really think that?
I would even do better, couldn't they?
I would do even one better. Here's a take for you guys. Jiwoo's actually a really good player. Jiwoo's actually a good player. He's on a bad team, Nongshim Red Force. He is the best player on Nongshim. Okay. Would he be shit on Gen G? Like, is Gen G no longer a first place team if we put Jiwoo on that roster? I think they're probably fine. Honestly, like, I think they're probably fine. I don't think
they would have won 17 series though. No, like that's the shittest take of all time. Jiwoo instead of Toby would win 17 series.
Jiwoo instead of
Peyz is trash.
No, Jiwoo instead of Peyz.
Oh,
Jiwoo
right. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. That's what I meant. Okay. Oh, I see what you mean. It's like, okay, that's the angle I get. Okay.
Yeah, my point is like, I don't think.
I mean, it's not impossible. Put it this way, you would definitely lose more individual games. Maybe you would still win the series. You would lose more individual games, though.
I'm just saying, like, what is the level of difference? And I think Peyz does deserve second or third team All-Pro this split. I think he's been great. But I think that if you actually consider the magnitude of Aiming's performance, because Aiming has even had very few of his Aiming inting moments, right? And the only reason Aiming inting matters, he did int against Gen G. He did, right? The D+ was very close to beating Gen G. He arcane shifts forward on Ezreal. He dies. They lose the series, right? So he did have some moments. But at the same time, what is the burden that's being placed on Aiming? It's like he has to be the giant carry, right? Look at the games where he's been popping off. He's like 10, 12 kills on fucking Kai'Sa or whatever. Like the amount that this guy has to do to win games on D+ is significantly more. And like, what does this man have to do? I mean, the answer is join Gen G or join T1 to be first team All-Pro. Like, how can you have a split like he had and not be first team All-Pro?
This is why I think they don't appreciate AD carry in LCK. If this guy played in the LPL, he'd be on all these things. He'd be a real MVP candidate. He'd probably be at least second team. He could possibly crack first team. They appreciate ADC there. I think people are just used to it being mid laner every fucking split or jungler. It's just mid lane or jungler you're in fucking LCK, innit?
Well, I mean, it's like the thing that I brought up in the past when Cooper Kupp like had all those records as a receiver, a couple years ago. What does a receiver have to do to win MVP in the league? Like, if he can't win it, you can't, is the answer. And it's like,
well, it's like the joke is it's the other way around. It's like the thing about Chovy. You have the quarterback would have to actively be bad, and then you could win it, if you know what I mean. Because that's actually one angle I think is fucking mental still. Yeah.
So I mean, I really like struggle because I just don't know what an aiming.
I'll tell you another
first
angle
team
that people don't even mention
looks like. I mean, I do.
Right. Who plays with Peyz? Who plays with Peyz in his lane? It's a 2-man lane.
Yeah, Lehens, obviously. Yeah.
Right, and then who plays with Viper? These are the best supports in the world, right? Now who plays with Aiming?
Kellen or Moham. He switched to support.
Whoever they want that week.
Yeah.
That's what I argue. Both players he plays with in his lane are players they didn't want at some point this split. They didn't want his replacement earlier, or they just started him, and then they don't want Kellen now. And he did. That's with fucking. This is like being a mid laner who outperforms Chovy with a shit jungler. You'd be a god. You know, the same thing happens in Counter-Strike, Monty. People don't know how to actually evaluate numbers. I'll tell you a funny stat in Counter-Strike very quickly. Ziwu just got to the same rating as Donk for the year. And everyone went, well, now he's at the same rating. He's the number one player. Donk is the entry player, the position that should be killed the most. So actually, I had to tell people, no, it goes the other way. That means Donk's even more impressive. That Ziwu, who plays more of a mid of the game thing, and sometimes with the AWP, has only the same numbers as him in what in theory should be a better carry role. That actually infers the opposite. So if aiming's ahead in all stats, if the eye test's great, if he actually has loads of deathless games, by the way, and you've won loads of series you on paper shouldn't have won, then he is actually the best player by that logic. Now, here's the problem. Again, with the Chovy one, I would just say the same way. But what did Chovy do wrong? Because if I boot up every game and I bring in all my mates that are the best mid laners and know all about laning, Monty, they're going to tell me he painted masterpieces this split. And he did impossible matchups. And he got ahead in matchups where you should only be ahead by a few CS and he was up 30 CS. They're going to tell me, what if I'm a mid laner, bro, what's he supposed to do? And then maybe the ADCs are going to tell me, yeah, but look at what aiming had to do. Look how he had to carry every fight. Of course, he has to go forwards. Is perfect going to win? You know what I mean? They could do that too. We could do that angle as well. So, I mean, Lucid, rather. Like, in this scenario, this is why I actually think it's an interesting discussion. It's just I don't know why Peyz got into it. I mean, I don't know where that angle comes from.
I mean, the answer is like, you know, what's so confusing, Thorin, is if aiming is first team All-Pro like he was on KT last year in summer, when we said, what the fuck are they doing voting every single member of KT first team All-Pro? Like, the answer is the only thing he can do to get first team All-Pro is literally just be first in the league, because the context of him doing that is irrelevant. The KT was a much better team that he was on last summer than the team he's on right now. Much better. Look at the players.
By the way, this is also terrible for the health of the league to do this. Because if you make it that everyone on the top team basically has a very good chance to be first team All-Pro, then you don't, with individual awards, award people for individually playing. If I'm Viper and aiming, then from Viper in the spring split, Monty, and aiming in the summer split, even if I don't get on T1 or Gen G, I should get a fucking sick contract re-up if I'm up for negotiation, because I can go, bro, I'm the MVP of the league, or I'm all first team. But if we're going to do this thing where, because they never lost a game, well, every single player on Gen G must be the best. Like, that doesn't even make sense. It will never make sense.
It's even worse, Thorin, because second team All-Pro was just all of Hanwha Life, which, like,
it's insane. That's
the
insane.
Most egregious. I'll play devil's advocate here. If we think Gen G is on track to be the best team of all time, maybe there's an argument that all five players are first team All-Pro.
Okay, possible. Yeah.
So I'll give you that. I would love to hear the argument where Doran is second team All-Pro, considering he absolutely ran it down in some games this split. Like, legit, Kingen was a better top laner than Doran this split. Like, I think Doran being second team is just outrageous. Like, it's outrageous. I would argue, Thorin, that Peanut had a better split than Canyon. Canyon was terrible in some games. Sure, he was great in some of the carry games, but Canyon also basically solo lost Gen G the KT series. And Peanut had what was effectively like an immaculate early game most games of the season. His pathing and his intelligence and his instinct are what got Hanwha Life ahead and into winning positions in the KT series, or in the Gen G series, even this last series. So, like, I don't know, man. Like, I think it's so crazy to me that we could be thinking about Doran as second team All-Pro. Like, I think there's an argument for Perfect as well being better than him, but I do think at least Kingen was better. You make an argument Zeus was better, even though Zeus didn't even have a good split. So I think the unanimous Hanwha Life, like, second team is also, like, really depressing. So I don't understand. Like, I guess it's just going to be like this all the time.
They'll always do it. It's just, the problem is, it's just the kind of homogenous thinking they do in Korea, unfortunately. I mean, I've pointed out before, if you do great work, you didn't do good work. Your boss did good work, and the whole office did good work, and everyone did good work, even though in every single office in the world ever, Monty, when they've done studies, they follow like a Pareto distribution where 20% of people do 80% of the work. That's just how it works. What you do is, like a team, you rely on your carries, you load them up, and the people who are a bit useless, you sort of go, don't int. And that's what it's like in an office. It's what it's like in a company. It's what it's like in a band. You know how many bands, Monty, where you go, like, if I took, like, the lead singer out of some all-time great band, it'd never be the same band. If I take the drummer out, you probably might not even know. You might not even know. Unless it's Led Zeppelin, you probably don't know. I'm sorry, that's just the way certain roles work. But if I say, oh, this fucking... really good band with a great singer and a great pop fucking guitarist. Oh, they must all be amazing because they sold millions of records. It's not even how life works. Because here's the reason it doesn't make sense. I'll even use that stupid logic, Monty, to destroy itself. So if you're saying if you come first, you must have the best players, well, then logically, if you had 3 of the best players and someone else had 2 or 1, you'd still win. Therefore, I've just destroyed your own logic because having the best players makes you win. You've got 3. That's the maximum you can have. No one else can have. So there's only 40% left. You could still be first. So it doesn't even work as internal logic. And the eye test tells you these weren't the 5 best players. Come on. Come on. The eye test.
What's outrageous, Thorin, is like, I thought they might learn after the KT playoffs disaster last year. I thought they might learn. Maybe we shouldn't just vote the top team as first team All-Pro because... look how KT got rolled in the playoffs, and like, please explain to me how they could get destroyed by T1 if they were that good. No, we didn't learn anything. we learned absolutely nothing. You know, it's not even like I think Hanwha is probably going to end up second this split, but you know, there's a lot of T1 buffs coming up on the playoff patch 14-16, including like Orianna buffs, Azir buffs, you know, things that'll be very Wukong buffs, things that'll be very Senna changes, you know, things that'll be very T1 friendly. So it's not outrageous, especially
we all want to watch is we just had a discussion. It is D+ against Hanwha Life. That's the match I want to watch in BO5.
Sure.
Bro, that's the interesting one. Let's see if Eamon can do it.
But I think
it's
like I think like this again, All-Pro probably just gonna age really poorly. Maybe it won't because Gen G is actually actually not even secretly, but actually just is the greatest team of all time. This is the next step on the golden road for them before they go to Worlds and win that. If that's the case, then like hard to argue, right? And they did dominate this split.
If this was the old LCK, Peyz would have been MVP because he had the most player of the game awards.
Yep. That is depressing.
That's how they used to do that for you. We'll give them this. At least they've leveled up a little bit more. They have got a little bit up. They've gone somewhat more reasonable. You know, we started in a bad place, but we've somewhat got out of that. I mean, there's a reason why motherfucking BDD is just sitting on like a fucking empire of like player of the year split awards or whatever. It's not always.
I mean, to be fair, I also think BDD deserves second team All-Pro. I think he was the second best mid laner. He was
easily the best player on KT, mate. Yeah.
He was stupid good for how trash KT was.
Of course.
But, you know, he's the 5th seed. He's on a 50% win rate team. Can't give it to him.
Here's some nightmare fuel for you. Are you ready? Pioshik has more player of the game awards than Viper this split. You figure that one out. You let that one bake your noodle. That's gross, isn't it? I know.
It's because the thing about player of the game is that it doesn't reward consistency. It just rewards peak, right? So like you could also be the worst player of the game even more times, but that's never going to be reflected in that stat.
Yes. Also, since I did make that video where I told you that Kim guy actually got shit on by Reddit for years, he's coach of the split, so suck on that. Oh, love it. Fucking love it, boys. Love that. Love him just racking up more shit.
But by the way, was it really hard to coach this Gen G roster? Was it that tough? Was getting these players together and just kind of letting them roll that tough?
I know loads of super teams that didn't win.
Yeah.
I think that's a skill. That's actually one thing I don't agree with. I think there's a type of manager that is godlike with super teams and with like the top talents, and they have like a mind for how to motivate a Chovy when they put it this way, he didn't have what happened with Viper, where people just went, basically won the split anyway, so phone it in a bit. No, he kept everyone going. By the way, I mean, they weren't smashing heads off walls, but everyone seemed pretty driven in this Gen G team. So I don't know. I imagine he did something. It's the guy, he's the only guy who ever got Rookie in the Shy on the same fucking page and made them actually look mega, win. He's the only one who could bench the Shy and actually control this motherfucker. So I think this guy, he's the fucking whisperer, mate. He just moves from region to region. He wins, he wins, he wins, he wins. He keeps winning. But yeah, tell me more about Coma. Tell me more about Coma. Y'all have been in a fucking coma in the LCK for years.
Speaking of Coma, by the way, we have a spicy telecom war coming up in the first round of LCK Playoffs, Thorin. And because it, you know, we may very well be in a situation where T1 just gets knocked the fuck out immediately. Because there's no losers.
It's not impossible. Yeah, it's not impossible. By the way, that would be the ultimate iniquity. You not only lose to KT, you lose to a not even very good KT, and you're just done completely. And remember, if you're done completely there, like, look, you'll still be in the regional, I assume, but
yes,
mate, that regional is going to be dangerous too. Those teams are no fucking joke at that level. Like, they're the ones that are coming for your head, mate. Some of those teams can win a series.
Yeah, and the regional final is so it's based off of championship points. So the top 4 teams participate, minus whoever, you know, wins. So it's not impossible. It's very unlikely that T1 would get knocked out because it required like pretty big runs from KT or BNK in order to do that. But it's not totally impossible. And like Genji's the only team that is officially already qualified for it. But, you know, they'll probably win.
Like, imagine the scenario: T1 goes into the regional. You're playing against KT and then D+. Like, dude, these are fucking hard games. These aren't just we're waltzing to worlds. Now, and by the way, how embarrassing would it be if your run-back World Championship roster, which you paid more money for, doesn't even make worlds? That's the end of the world. That's actually that's a fucking huge. Like, if you're T1, holy shit. And not least because I'm just going to say this, all you Faker fans. You know all that you said about Rookie, that anytime he doesn't make worlds, it's just because he's not good. I'm going to be there, bitch. Set your alarm. If it happens, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there with your fucking quotes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, that fucking, I remember shit.
So the way that the Korean qualification works too is that the summer winner is the first seed, and then the top championship point team is the next seed. So if that's Genji also, then it would go to the second team in terms of championship points. And then the third and fourth seed are the ones that are decided by regional finals. But because Summer is weighted more heavily, and because Hanwha is already in the next round, Hanwha is currently ahead of T1 in terms of points. So T1 basically has to make a deep run to avoid the regional qualifier because Hanwha is currently ahead of them. So we live in a world where T1 might have to play in the regional qualifier, might actually lose in the regional qualifier. It seems unlikely because I don't think that KT or FearX are going to be the teams that in the regional qualifier that like knock them out of the top 4. But it's not, I mean, it's a scary situation. And it's scary too because KT is a team that has beaten them already this split.
Here's an angle for you. The reason why if you're T1, it's even worse is because you know what? There's a world where KT probably understand money. They still might not make it from the regional anyway. So you know what happens then is in the back of your brain, you have one thing to play for, to beat T1. That's a very good reason to still be trying hard, bro. That scalp is worth a lot. That could probably even trick some team into signing you for next year. Like, that match for them is the world finals if they play fucking T1. It is. It's their season.
Well, it's also that the matchup between T1 and KT has just kind of ended up being weird this year.
Imagine Pure doing it again, bro. He steals a world from you, then he knocks you out of a world. Chef's kiss.
I hate Pure, but I subscribe to this timeline. The issue with this matchup is it gets weird because in the past this split, even when AD carries have been meta, because neither BDD nor Faker like playing them, they almost just like handshake mages in this meta, which again, some of these mages are going to be buffed, but it helps BDD as well. Like, I would argue that this is also a patch, you know, a patch that could really help KT. So, I mean, if Pyosik and Barrow come out with the magic one more time and are able to just like bounce T1 out of playoffs, I mean, T1 is going to have to play in the regional final at that point in time, and they're going to have to be able to like steal a spot from D+ or KT, which would be teams that will probably make it further in the playoffs for some than they did. So it's a perilous position. It certainly is a perilous position.
Also, to bring it back, if you are a Coma hater, you can say the following sentence. It is all factually true, and I've put no opinion into it. You took the World Championship team. You didn't win the World Championship with them. You took the World Championship lineup and didn't make Worlds. You did that. You. Who did that?
Same
Not me.
players.
That's a fact. I didn't put any opinion in there. You're the greatest coach of all time, homie. Go for it. Coach. Tell you what, how hard is it to coach the number one team at Worlds to not even make Worlds next year? Apparently very easy, potentially. We'll see. We'll see how it works. And also, I'll just put this out there. That Faker thing, why are we all just skipping over that, bro? That really has been memory hold. They went like this. It's okay because he has COVID. Oh, wait, he's still in the next game anyway. But what headbanging? No, he doesn't like metal. No, he's a mid laner. Yeah, anyway, into the next game, guys. Ha 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 ha. Like, are we just all going to skip over that?
It's amazing that they've gotten the league and T1 have both gotten away with saying absolutely nothing about that, despite the fact that it took place in the studio during an official match.
Now you see why if it wasn't for Thorin and Richard Lewis, nobody would ever know about Danny in Evil Geniuses. Because, bro, even fucking Faker gets memory hold when he's got some sort of problems and he's breaking down. Even Faker.
Well,
this is mental.
I mean, here's the other problem with this, Thorin, is that it just sends the message that this isn't important. Just wasn't important, I guess. Because if it was important, they would say something.
One thing in the NBA that fans hate is that every single team's pretty much become very cynical. And if their player has any injury-prone aspect, they rest them and do load management over the regular season games, Monty. Because they understand as an org, we want to protect our investment. And so even if you have to take a lower playoff seed, let's get to the playoffs and then we'll activate them and see if we can win. They don't even do that in fucking Korea. Faker should be your number one investment. Doesn't he get paid like $5 million a year or something?
Who knows?
And you're just going to burn him out at the end to a crisp and then just exit this fucking space. That's sad.
I mean, I think they probably would have done it differently if T1 wasn't, potentially getting a bounce out of playoffs even in this last week. Like, it was unlikely in the last week of competition that T1 wasn't going to make playoffs, but they were on the cusp, man. Like, it was like a couple bad losses away. Even in the final week of the season, if they had gone 0-2 in both of their games, there were still scenarios where they wouldn't make playoffs. So I do think, like, that was definitely a consideration. It's probably one of the reasons why they continue to play him.
Also, here's the other hurtful fact, Coma. No opinion given, just a factual statement. If he did fail with the World Championship roster to win Worlds again, or even make... Well, he already did that with Damwon. He got Damwon when they won, and then he didn't win the next year. Listen, mate, I'm not making you do this. You're getting the best rosters in the game, supposedly, theoretically. It's just your career. Keep coaching, homie. You and Bengi, all I'm saying is, you're on that fraud bus. You were just fucking... Faker was the ultimate bus driver, and you were just in the back, fucking swapping Cabbage Patch stickers or something. Was that even the thing? I think it was. They were pretty dope.
Making the 80s references. Nice.
Yeah, those are straight fire. Those old stickers, though, had like weird, like twisted aspects to them. Toxic waste and shit. Listen, mate, Monty, there was a lot of cartoons about toxic waste when we were kids. You'd have thought that was some major thing. Remember, everything, it was making people fucking X-Men and aliens and all sorts of shit.
Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
It's true. It was big hype in the 80s and 90s.
Gone away now. No one gives a fuck anymore, do they? I know it's never even mentioned.
All right. You want to talk about LPL or LEC? One of those much more interesting than the other one. Because, like, look, this was actually, I mean, we haven't even discussed this yet. This was probably one of the most boring weekends of playoffs in a long time across all regions. Because basically, either the matches were extremely one-sided or they were just complete garbage to watch, or both in a lot of cases. LCK wasn't in playoffs yet, so we got like a bunch of games that just didn't fucking matter at the end. So what was kind of the point of watching them? LPL, we're in the top four. You think, ooh, yeah, this is going to be the time. It's going to be super hyped. Nope. Games were just complete dumpstering. Very little resistance given by either Weibo or LNG, which was pretty depressing. As we are recording this right now, the BLG top series is going on, so we haven't actually seen that yet, guys.
Probably going to be a BLG win, though.
Yeah, probably going to be a BLG win. They're up 2-1 right now as we are recording this, so who knows how it turns out. But yeah, this is the winners bracket final. And yeah, I think the quarters were a little bit depressing, but at the same time, it's nice to see like BLG actually kind of returning to form, because Sure, they won a lot of games in the placements and then the regular season of summer, but Knight was like really off. They switched junglers from Wei to Jun. They switched their play style quite a bit. Bin was by far their best player and arguably, should have deserved the MVP of LPL. Elk and On were also adjusting to a new style where the jungler wasn't entirely playing through them. But it was rough going there, even if their record didn't show it. And, they played a shockingly large amount of game threes. Like, they would just throw games a lot of the time or play really badly in one of the first two games. And then they'd click it on in game number 3 and stomp usually. But it wasn't the easiest, smoothest road that they could have entered the playoffs on. But we get to see them in their first series up against Weibo, which is a team also that, these are teams that struggled perhaps early on. Weibo definitely much more so, but Tarzan turned it around and was a potential MVP candidate himself. Xiaohu and Tarzan were both performing super badly at the start of placements. But at the end of the day, the firepower on BLG right now is extraordinary, and they managed to fix a lot of their issues.
The problem there is, they're just about to potentially beat top esports. If you want to go off form, top esports was the one murking the league. Maybe they can actually do it. Maybe they can beat them this time. Maybe Scout overperforms on fucking LNG. Maybe Weibo actually Tarzan turns it around. Suddenly they're really good. The problem is it's looking at the moment like BLG was able to just coast a little bit, and then now there's going to be the best team in the playoffs. I wouldn't on that one if in scrims they were just winning or something, and they knew even if Mike's form's not that good, we're just the best team. You just get to the playoffs, then you turn it on, because at the moment it's looking like it's probably just going to be BLG top esports in the final again. It's just going to have a run back of that. And yeah, at this point, the problem is even though on paper that should be a really fun matchup, because you could argue the top esports bot lane's better right now. The issue is actually this should have been closer. I thought Cream did have a bit of a glow up, actually. He does have some games that are mega
very good.
So, on the way, Tian does the thing he's done for a million times. In the summer, he starts having crazy-ass games where he actually outhands people and mechanically does all the right moves and does the right pathing. And you go, wow, this is the sort of player who, I don't know, could win MVP of the World's Finals. And then he goes, yes, and then get me to the World Finals and I will pay you back double. I am the Scorpion. Ride on my back, frog. Oh, no, but please, Tian, you won't sting me, will you, when we get to Worlds? No, of course I will, because I'm a Scorpion. But you really enjoy this ride, don't you? Yes, I'll just enjoy the ride and surely hope you won't sting me. Oh, you've stung us and we're both done for, Scorpion. Why have you done this? I'm not done for. I'm going to crawl out and join another team. It's just what he does, isn't it? That's who he is.
Factually, Tian, only player, both World's MVP and Dade Award winner. That's just true. He's the only one.
And he's an LPL MVP too. Oh, he's ridiculous, man. It's actually ridiculous.
He was incredibly good when he won a world title, and I think Dom makes good points of him being the peanut of China, being just very smart, pathing oriented, maybe not the best mechanics any longer, possible choker in major games. Although Peanut doesn't choke domestically, Peanut only chokes internationally, and Tian has had very peak performances, which is why he was, world's MVP. And he was the carry of that roster as well. We all remember some of his phenomenal games on Kiana Jungle and stuff like that. He looked amazing. Peanut used to be the guy with hands too at one point in time.
By the way, it's also why I actually do think that when you look at the fucking best players in China, the reason the league's super strong is, funnily enough, the reason the LEC is weak, which is a lot of the talent spread out. Actually, these teams aren't necessarily the super teams people thought they were, because some of them obviously came up together. If you go and look, put it this way, if you want to go to Weibo, who am I thinking of? If you want to go to LNG, bro, Scout and Gala are really fucking good.
Yep.
Their team might not be good enough to win LPL. They're really good. What more do you want them to do? If you want to go, we say, Tian fucking say, the bot lane's mega for top esports. If you want to go further down, I'm not the biggest Yagao fan, but he's not terrible. He's not in the playoffs anymore, but even he wasn't terrible. He's still all right. There's still a lot of talent in this league. By the way, Jun, one of the best junglers in spring, doesn't even get to play now. He sits and watches as Way plays, and it's probably the right move. It actually kind of fixed BLG. So it just shows you the talent is so crazy in that league. It's so fucking sick. It's why it's probably going to be the case again that in their regional, someone's going to get their heart broken, it feels like happens every year. Someone's going to get robbed. Let's hope it's not LNG, but you know what? Who the fuck knows? It's a sort of sad thing that could happen.
Yeah, and I think with top esports, like if we actually look at the quarterfinal matchups that happened, a lot of top esports success against LNG was like 3-6. The top lane diff was really what fucking killed LNG in that series.
Oh yeah, of course. Deacon was fucking getting murked, mate. It was ridiculous.
369 was crazy in those games. And the thing about top that's really fun to watch is like 369. If you guys watched him last year, like, oh yeah, that guy who plays tanks really well. Sure, he can do that. Also, he's just been playing a fuck ton of Mordekaiser. He basically innovated the Mordekaiser top meta that you guys have seen. First off, he was playing it as a counter to Skarner, then as a counter to Cassante. But his ability to like target select and flash in and just like grab somebody was the reason why they were like coming back in some of those games versus LNG. And like he was the one who was making the plays. And Cream, clearly it's a very good meta for him. Who's going to complain about an AD mid meta when you have Cream on the roster and he can play, he can play Yone and ranged AD carries so well. It's been Jackie Love's been good and Mako has been the best support maybe in the world this summer.
Mega.
By
the way, the actual player on BLG, it's funny everyone focuses on Knight. Dude, I think Elk has been mad off this split. That guy was being called best ADC in the world in spring. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Everyone was raving because his numbers were crazy. His fucking Lucian games were bonkers. He's fallen off a cliff this split, mate.
Well, I think it's because they got really used to, the way that BLG was doing so well in spring was it's like, it's a very different meta. It's the meta that T1 was excelling in. It's like, okay, here we come. Hail of Blades. We're going to push up really aggressively. Then Jun would come and he would use that pressure to invade bot side jungle. And then they would walk in and kill the enemy junglers, zone them out. Then they would execute a dive. Then they would snowball through bot lane really heavily, right? And so I think it's taken a period of adjustment for them to fix that issue. And it's fortunate that, with the switch to Wei, they have Ben has been their best player. He's been their best player this summer, period.
And he's always just sat there. He's so skilled and he wants to play the top lane style. So if you ever need a help, play to him, mate. He'll fucking smash the lanes and beat them
not only that, but
of course.
He really is responsible for the Renekton craze we see around the world. It's just that Ben actually gets value out of winning lane on Renekton. The problem is like many pro players can win lane on Renekton. That's not the hard part. The thing that's hard on Renekton is translating that lead into meaningful team fights. And it is very difficult to do that when we are in a meta where we're playing 2 AD carries, often with very high mobility, like Corki or Ezreal, like these champions where they can just auto escape whatever you're doing. Kaisa, right? Very, very hard. And then you also have junglers and or supports that can disengage super easily. You're trying to play into a Sejuani or a Maokai or a Leona or an Alistair in particular, who can just either CC you or kick you out of the fight entirely. So it becomes very difficult to have that be meaningful, but Ben always finds the angles. He is very good at zoning out enemy AD carries while still presenting a kill threat if they get too close. He's very good at spacing on Renekton. And this is a guy who consistently takes those lane leads and then turns them into victories by far more than any other professional Renekton player in the world right now. And that's why, he, I think, probably more so than anybody else is responsible for that because he is the best Renekton player. And it's not just about laning. It's about how he takes a 2,000 gold advantage from lane and actually wins the game, because we've seen a lot of other Renekton players get a 2,000 gold lead and then do fucking nothing. So,
by the way, BLG just won. They won the fourth game.
Spoilers.
And Knight had a massive Corki game.
Yeah, Knight's been really good. So BLG, I think that advances them automatically to the finals, which I believe auto qualifies them for Worlds.
Since they won spring, surely a minimum on championship points, right? So yeah, must be. It must be.
Yep. So
yeah, they're the only team they've already locked in Worlds.
Great. Okay. Well, that's good to know. Yeah, the regionals only determine the 3rd and 4th LPL teams. So, yeah.
But look how competitive the rest of it is, though. The rest of it's amazing, mate. That's a fucking unbelievable set of teams.
Yeah. Look, LPL playoffs, maybe less of a banger than we had hoped. Maybe it's just the slow road to BLG winning again, but maybe we'll get something good.
The thing is, though, what I like is, though, if you're going to go to Worlds, I know everyone's going to meme like, oh, who gives a shit about top? Right? Remember, even at MSI, they were the only team that took Gen G to the 5 games. At EWC, they looked awesome until they played T1. Bro, that's a team that is a true dark horse to win Worlds. Like, that bot lane can get it done, mate. I want to see what the meta is. Think about it. Right? You just said it right there, Monty. If Cream keeps his shit together and Tian doesn't int, haven't they got the top lane and the bot lane to do it? Bro, they have the people who can play the carry. They have the people who can play the both sides of the game on bot lane.
It just feels like Riot is drifting away from the AD mid meta slowly. So like that probably isn't going to do Cream a ton of favors. I also think like at least in top esports case at MSI, Cream massively underperformed, but it was his first international tournament and like he looked better at esports World Cup.
Yeah, way better.
But we'll see if I doubt the stakes were very high for top.
That's why I said as well, it's actually also fugazi that when people tell me Knight isn't that good because of Worlds, well, they make it fucking Orianna Azir every year, don't they? Like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to be the best Syndra. I'm allowed to be the best Silas. I'm allowed to play these champions. Okay, my bad, Riot. I guess I'll just play your game that you want me to play. I thought I was playing League all year. My bad. My mistake.
Well, if it makes you feel better, the Syndra buffs are coming, so.
Good. Bring it. All I'll tell you is this, mate. I guarantee you fucking rulers sat up late at night. You up to fucking night? Yeah, those team fights are a little bit harder now, aren't they, Dracos? You can't 1v9, can you? 1v9 means you're fighting your own teammates as well, bozo. He had fucking literally the best Rakan player, the best tank top player, and the best team fighting mid. How is he 1v9? Bro, you have one brain cell 1v9ing all your other brain cells. That's not bad, actually. Whatever. It's all good. I'm the only one who can flame him, mate. One, they can't address me. Literally, I'm like some fucking rogue Ronin character they can't even actually acknowledge exists. And secondly, my fucking words pierce them. They probably don't. Who gives it? They probably don't give a shit. They probably just pull up the dive and just go, hey, player, let me just give you a fucking foot massage while we all talk about how brilliant your team is. Everyone not G2. Oh, what's that? There's one teammate in scrims. Hilarious. Oh, 100k views. I must be doing a good job. I think that's how their psychology works.
Hey, I mean, at least in LEC's case, most viewed split ever.
It is. Yeah, number one.
Asterisk, 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 because of co-streamers.
That's why the maddest thing ever is, like, could you even imagine popping out the time machine, a portal / sending this message back in time? If you told people, Monty, what that Astralis slot was sold for, and then you told them that in the same off season that an LCS team would go, I'll take 6 million to fuck off. That would blow someone's mind. You had the greatest advantage ever with sponsors and viewership, and you tanked the whole thing. Your entire region inted. There you go. You were all CLG in the end.
Hey,
I've got counter logic.
If you want to see how genius Riot is, remember that there was a time in the, so how did LEC get the highest viewership ever? Okay, what did they do? They took team owners who were popular streamers and let them co-stream. Man, I can't remember of time when the biggest rivalry in North America also had 2 team owners who were popular streamers.
That's how you create the whole culture. Yeah.
I wonder if Reggie and Hotshot streaming in 2015 would have been good for LCS. There's no way to know. There's no way we could know.
Here's an obvious A/B testing where you could know. Are you ready? Do you think, Monty, that if it wasn't Nadeshot, but it was Tyler 1 who owned 100 Thieves, 100 Thieves would be less popular or more popular? They'd be way more popular. Everyone would even tune in to see what he'd do a comment. Oh, everyone would tune in to see him flame all the draft and all the fucking players and say that the other team's shit and FlyQuest are all bums and vegans and look at these gains, bro. You think you get that with fucking plant-based chickpeas or something? I couldn't even do a fucking I should just do a skit where I'm Tyler 1, basically, you know. But whatever, I'd obviously have to put it 4-3. Fucking wrong aspect ratio, you know. By the way, he has a fucking head that looks like a sentinel. There's a reference for you. Or a Ninja Turtle, one of the two. Or a Lego Man. Any of these 3, they're all good.
Tyler 1 Mega Man cosplay win.
Yeah, exactly.
But But anyway, yeah, it just makes you wonder, because if they think they're such geniuses for allowing co-streaming and then hitting higher numbers, like my question is like, why was it a good idea now but not a good idea in the past? Can literally anyone at Riot explain this to me?
That's the answer to every policy, the follow-up question to every policy they ever do. Hey, we implemented something really obvious that we refused to do before, and now it's amazing. Why didn't you do it before, and why was it not the correct case, and why has no one ever been fired? Enough questions for today. We're going to have cake and soda.
Promote John Needham.
Mate, John Needham, fucking hell. This guy fails fucking upwards. He's like fucking. Who would I even pick for that? Who would I even pick? Who fails upwards? That's technically, this is too deep for you lot. Rhett Vickler, he actually went like back to the LPL and was like in a good team or whatever. So even though he was dog shit on FlyQuest, he nicked that bag, got the fuck out of here. He did a sword art. He's like, I'm leaving with the bag. See ya.
Can we briefly touch on LEC before we finish up with talking about the teams?
It was a boring week, but
it was terrible.
Yeah.
It was terrible. There were encouraging signs, though. And the encouraging signs were this. We got to see G2 actually playing mid AD carries and like trying to somewhat conform to the meta.
That might be I think that's in the pocket. Maybe that's waiting for the files or something. Could be.
It just felt like, the G2 versus MDK series, they came in overconfident. They weren't like, they were still trying to put caps on like non-meta picks. Like this series, it was like, okay, guys, we're just going to play the meta. We're going to get rid of GiantX, even if it shows that we're playing the meta. Like, here's caps on a Smolder, which is obviously becoming more meta. Here's caps on the Corki and then the Tristana. Now, caps obviously has been a great Tristana this entire year, but he was definitely not playing this style against MDK. Like, he was on Orianna, he was on Azir, he was on Annie, he was on Ari. Like, these were not picks that were really, I would say, the most high priority selections. And we also, what do we have Yike back on? It's like, you're back on fucking Ivern Maokai duty, buddy.
Yeah, because he was trying to play carries. And by the way, this is the one problem I have with that series, and I'll never get past it, is bro, even though Mad Lions won the game, I saw, Nexus exploded, it said victory. That's all factually true. Broken Blade into that entire fifth game draft without really a pick. Like, just pick a tank for fuck's sake. You know what I mean? Just do a whip on pick Sion.
I think it's just, I think, Mirwin often, because of the flexes that they were doing, and I think they also know that they needed to actually be able to play some more of these champions. Like Hans Sama playing Zeri also in this series, which hasn't been a Hans Sama pick. So it feels like they're trying to conform to the meta, because their inability to prioritize AD carries actually led to the situation against MDK where basically MDK was like allowed to like ultra flex these. Like, there shouldn't be a game in the current meta where one team is allowed to have Smolder, Zeri, and Ezreal at the same time. Like, no. They can't have all three of those champions. Something has gone wrong in drafting where you have such a low priority on these picks that you're not taking any of them. So that I did appreciate, and of course we don't want to lose the flair that G2 has. Like, picking the Galio into the Rumble was interesting, and sure, GiantX didn't play very well. They also looked very nervous in the playoffs, honestly, Thorin. Like, they were like going way too hard, trying to like over dive, which, really hasn't been there. They haven't been like an early game aggressive team. So it was kind of weird to see them do that. But I think it was just like, I think it was nerves. So veterancy of G2 shines through. There's still things. I mean, Jackie's is still a promising player on GiantX. Like, they weren't expected to go super far. I am just happy we saw G2 clean these guys up, because I needed to see this, which is like more standard play, more meta picks from G2 to really have a lot of confidence. I mean, that was Hans Sama's first game on Zeri this split. That is crazy. That is crazy in this current meta that could be true. It's his first game on Zeri this year. He has never been the Zeri guy. He has a losing record on Zeri, despite being on despite a player who's won 60% of the game. He's 42% on Zeri. He's played it only 14 times. With how powerful Zeri has been since release, on average, nuts. It's nuts.
Yeah, he's European Gumayushi. I don't know who that's an insult to. You figure it out. You figure it out.
In a way. But it was encouraging. It was encouraging to see that. And like, we need to also, know that Caps can play it too, that this is a pick that can be flexed, but it felt like they were playing more normal meta League of Legends this time. Still with their own twist, obviously, like Galio top, Yone top, not champions we see top lane a whole lot right now. But game one was extremely standard in terms of draft and very well executed by them. So not a tough opponent, but it gives me hope that G2 can play the meta, which is what, it's just going to be the easiest way for them to win. And they looked really incapable of doing that versus MDK, which then allowed MDK to really heavily warp the draft in their favor. And I guess you could say the same thing about BDS in a way, which is that Nuke had a much better performance. Like, Nuke's performance versus Fnatic was fucking terrible. Their whole team's performance was really bad, but Nuke in particular was bad. I think the biggest thing that I noticed in this series was that the draft for BDS really did focus on getting Sheo like engaged tanks. Like, we got up to like first pick blue side Sejuani, because the experiment of having Sheo on, Morgana or AP carry junglers is just, it's not gone well. He needs to be on a champion that can actually like play skirmishes in the early game. Otherwise, he's just completely useless. So that was good. We also, got Ice back onto the Ashe, which I think has been all this year, because remember in the spring, Ice was like, I am the facilitating engage AD carry. I am the Jhin. I am the Ashe. And then he became the hyper carry, like I am the Jinx player in summer. So it was a shift in their play, but we got to see both sides of it this series. Also, Niski played really bad.
You have to realize this is probably the worst meta imaginable for him. Like, it's just, this isn't where you can just be Niski. Like, it doesn't play these champions. It's not his style. Also, by the way, a shocking one, obviously, is normally irrelevant. It's held it over Adam forever. Bro, that Cassiopeia game Adam played was actually fire. When he got rolling on that, he was just fucking monster. He just destroyed you.
Yeah, it was interesting too as a counter pick, because we've people try and figure out how to deal with Rumble. Like, Keen has the Rise in the top side, and it is such a powerful pick that it was fun, especially to see it as a flex, because obviously Nuke is very famous for playing the Cassiopeia, and it's a great pick into Lucian, for example, right, that he had in the first game. And he played it very well, and then it became like a fun flex pick for them if they give up the Rumble. So I thought it was I appreciated seeing both of the series this week, because even though they were ridiculous shit stomps, even though SK massively underperformed, like Niski didn't have a good series, Yzma had a terrible series, Irrelevant didn't look comfortable in some of these carry roles.
They threw that game one like a motherfucker. They actually had everything going. They had the dream start in game one. They just threw it in the toilet completely.
Yeah. They played really badly around that Drake. The Drake where they got kind of like slowly picked off. It was not a good series from SK, and they all had, especially the top side of the map looked kind of individually weak. But
it's why I find it. Yeah, go on.
No, I don't care if SK looks weak, guys, and I don't care if GiantX look weak. What I needed to see this week was that G2 and BDS are not fucking shit, because that is the worst scenario. Because if you are a European fan, you want a strong G2 and BDS, because you do not. I hope you guys don't actually want Mad Lions Koi to go to Worlds. I hope you don't actually want that, because that's going to be a disaster. They'll make some fun memes, I guess, with Mirwin, like Adam.
Because the thing is, to me, this is why you never could totally give up on BDS. Because as you saw in this week, bro, when they just draft the team fight comp, they can beat most teams in the LEC and will beat most teams there. It doesn't even matter if they're behind, if the other team has leads. They will just win those team fights, mate. I tell you what, they know how to team fight correctly. I'll give them props on that one. A lot of the shit I didn't like about them was things like Adam side lane and then gets fucking caught, or plays like a bozo in lane, or makes his jungler have to be torn between multiple lanes. Like, when they just drafted cynically for team fights, they look fucking great.
Yeah. So LEC, this was the boring week, right? At least we're gonna have G2 versus BDS in the next week. I think what's unfortunate is we're getting that as a losers bracket match, obviously, but BDS will definitely. They should be able to squeak through, hopefully, at this point in time. Like, they're way up there in terms of championship points, And like if G2 or Fnatic, I believe, win the split, it's very difficult for Mad Lions to overtake them. Let's see if Mad Lions ends third. Maybe at 120 points, maybe they could actually overtake them. But yeah, I think it's pretty.
Well,
they're feeling pretty
perfect.
comfortable.
Basically, as long as the problem is obviously if G2 fucks up and loses, it can ruin the whole thing, can't it? That's what happens in that scenario. But okay, if you BDS, your life's in your own hands. Beat G2.
Yeah. So I mean,
you can beat Mad Lions yourself.
I mean, one thing that I think is good about this format is like it is kind of winner takes all, because this is based the season finals, you qualify based off of the championship points, right? And so you really do have to fight it out at the end. And as boring as it is to have and confusing to have the playoff bracket into the playoff bracket, this way you do it, there's actually like all of the marbles for Worlds qualification outside of the summer winner. And even the summer winner has things to play for in terms of seeding. So it doesn't feel super terrible, right?
I'll tell you what I think sucks though. This format fucking blows where you wait every week to play a series. You need the summer finals to be its own event, super hype like this, all the Worlds qualification, and then play it over a week. Make it fucking super hype, match into match, the next day. That would be fucking fire. These weeks draw it out, because then it means if you have a bad series, you're like, what a shit week this was. Fucking hell.
Yeah. Yeah, it does need to conclude faster. Also,
by the way, you could even use the upset. Wouldn't you have liked to have seen Mad Lions play like 2 days later against Fnatic? That would be fucking fire, wouldn't it? Straight into that match and see if they're still hot.
Yeah, I was actually being dumb, guys. If G2 wins, BDS is out. They're out. So BDS does need to win, because I was thinking about championship points, but that's what qualifies you to the season final. So
but here's the thing. One, if you can never, ever beat G2, what were you really going to do at Worlds? Two, Fnatic and Mad Lions have now beaten G2 in Best of 5 series. So if you're BDS, what are you waiting for, my dude? You're the ones who tell me you don't need to upgrade players and you have good players and that they're all good enough. Then fucking show me. Can you win ever against the best team? Bro, KT's beating Gen G. Can you win one time? Just one time? In theory, G2 shouldn't even be as hyped. They're going to go to Worlds no matter what. If you're ever going to get them, now's the time. So you know what, Adam? Get your fucking picks prepped, son. Shio, tighten that fucking asshole up, mate. Nuke, don't play like you think you're a fucking god. Just play to the lane. Ice, stay back. Labrov, do some hooks, engages. Let's go. Probably still 3-0. I think
if you don't give Sheo Maokai or Sejuani, they're gonna be in trouble. That's what I think.
Well, all I need to know is this, Monty. If my jungler has to have Maokai or Sejuani to win, I don't know if I would give a fuck if they go to Worlds or not. You know what? At this point, I'm adopting. Are you ready? I'm going to bring back from 2015 Unicorns Love. It's Chaos style. Mad Lions, Chaos style. Chaos style. The drafting. I want them to do the crazy draft in the top lane. Some Korean player like, what the fuck? He is playing Nidalee top. This is not season 5. I want that in a BO1. Let's see if that can work. Let's go for it. Dude, you know what, D+, I want you to play against Nidalee top Merwin. There we go. I
want to see Keen play against that, because I know Keen has some fucking wacky ass counter pick into that. 100%. He's the player to do it. He's the player to do it and be unfazed by it. So that'd be fun. Anyway, more like good LEC actually coming up this week, not the kind of piss poor LEC that we had going on here. But if you are a fan of either of those teams, I think the clean sweeps are the most encouraging sign that you could see. But yeah, I mean, it's like 2 games this week, and then you head straight to beautiful Munich, Germany for the finals. I like how both for LCS and LEC, they like just couldn't escape the immediate region that it's played. Like they couldn't play in a different European country. They couldn't even play it outside of Southern California, not even out of the same city. They're still in LA County, for God's sake, for LCS. So we're really just cutting those budgets. Like we can't drive very far, guys. We can't go very far away. God forbid we have to get on a plane in order to go to our finals.
It's actually just a Riot thing in general, by the way. Like in Valorant, for the main finals, they're in that big place. Bro, even in the lower bracket and like the lower semis, they're playing it in some place that's like a theater. It looks like a fucking place you'd watch a movie or something, mate. It's disgraceful. It's in like the Coex Mall, I think. It's like,
Yeah, I mean,
this?
the Coex Mall, I looked at that. The Coex Mall is very famous for esports events. Like I've done finals there, but usually you're in a hall that can hold several thousand people. And actually the place that they're doing the finals or the top 4 for Valorant is like a 15,000 brand new arena that's on the island in Incheon that the airport is on. Interestingly, it's part of like a resort. It does look actually very nice. So I saw people complaining about that, and I looked it up, and it was like, oh, top 4 is actually in a big arena. It kind of makes sense. But yeah,
but it's your world championship, bro. By the way, in Valorant, they've announced again for next year. Oh, good news, 2 masters and champions. Like, by the way, these are people who played CS, you moron. They hate that. They fucking despise it. The only thing that's good is all those stupid CS players used to tweet, I wish we had an LCS. How do you like your LCS today, dickhead? How do you like it now? You're in LCS? Congrats. It's brilliant, isn't it? Enjoy playing 2 times a year, not making worlds champions and just watching on stream with the rest of us, you morons. Because in CS, by the way, we make fun of events that only have like, you know, a small like crowd of 1,000 or something, or 5,000 for the that's like a small event. People don't, event shouldn't even count. Cassard calls Blast Finals that have like 5-7K people watching banana cops. That would be fucking incredible for LEC. That's the stupidest thing about the product, bro. That you don't have like LEC except season finals in a big fucking stadium. It's so whack. And everyone just accepts it. I don't even care about these titles anymore. You want them all in the studio. Who cares if you win in a broom closet? It's about winning in front of the crowd. It's about conquering the moment. It's about the spotlight shining down on you. It's about when you lose. Are you ready? When you lose, you have to get up while the confetti rains on your face for the other guy. You have to walk. You're not even allowed to leave the stage. You have to have the humiliation ritual of that handshake into waiting while they give you like a medal and you just watch him lift the trophy you dreamed of. No, in the LEC studios, it goes like, defeat, and then you just go, fuck it, go backstage. Right. What kebab do you want today? Do you want the garlic or the spicy sauce?
Well, don't worry. Everything at Worlds will be in the LEC studio up until playoffs, so it'll be a very great hype event.
Riddle me this. Record viewership. Then why don't we have all the big finals in studios?
Well, because I'll tell you the reason is because Riot doesn't understand that the product of esports is that, right? And so they see a cost that they can cut and they think it's going to be exactly the same, but they don't understand that the more you cut those kind of costs, the less seriously the fans take the event and the less hype they are about your competition. And so eventually you just start to bleed and shed viewers over time because people become uninterested in your sport. And like, they don't understand that. They see a line item that is this big cost and they don't think, well, if I cut this, what's going to happen to our viewership over the long haul? What's going to happen to people's interest in the league? Because, of course, they're very arrogant and they think, well, the game keeps them there. Our game that we developed. No, it's not. It's actually not that. It's the storyline that you tell and the wrapping that's around the events. That's what keeps.
You know what I wish we could do? I think we need to do an Atlas Shrugged Player Edition League of Legends. What happens is, Monty, it's January 1st, 2025. G2 coming up in their team house. Where's Caps? Faker in T1. Faker's gone. Trophy's gone. You go over, Knight's gone. Fucking, what's gone? Bin's gone. What's gone? Jackie Love's gone. Over in the LCS, Berserker, Blabber, they're gone. Fucking Core JJ's gone. You know what? All these teams can get replacements and play. Would the interest still be the same? Would the viewership still be the same? Would the game? It wouldn't. Those few players, it's only a select few, they carry so much of the weight of the why we care about this league on their back. In the same ways, by the way, I'm sure you found this in sports, Monty. The cool thing you find is this. There's that 2 to 3 year cool down period when Peyton Manning retires, when all the great players retire. Even Antonio Brown, I miss him. He was one of the best players ever. When they cooled, you have the first few years where you just sort of go, is it ever going to be the same again? Then luckily, eventually, the next players come through. It takes a few years. The next ones come through and they become really good. And Mahomes blossoms and Lamar Jackson, and you go, right, okay, finally I can get back in again. But I'll tell you what, that gap is treacherous, bro. There's times you could have tuned out, especially if your team's one of the ones that lost the player. You could just go, maybe I'm out for a while. That's the perilous part that Riot doesn't get, because they're stupid enough to think, like you say, their game does it. Bro, those are the greatest sports of all time, and they have the fucking transition period. So the arrogance to think just your game, the arrogance to think because you made Zeri into a character, that's why we're watching LEC. You fucking morons. That's not it at all. That isn't it at all.
Yeah.
Those top players carry so much.
Well, and they cut all the budgets and to star build those players, like all of the fun skits and the songs that were celebrating the players. Those are all gone from LEC now, right? And will they use Worlds to advertise their esports to their players? No, they're going to use it to advertise the new season of Arcane. That's coming out in November.
That's why I always thought it was genius that even one of the most beloved Worlds videos, where they technically showed players in their moments, was the player as the champion doing the moment. Oh, these motherfuckers are so ridiculous. They're so ridiculous. Because they never ever did that one, Monty. They never did the LCK opening. They never really had the one where it's like Faker with his 3 championships back when he had the 3, and then Uzi reaching for the crown but not quite getting it, and then people like Knight and Chovy coming on but then turning into Ghost suddenly, and Peanut and just fading in the background. Oh, I've just made a way better Worlds video in 5 seconds of thinking off the top of my head there than any of that shit. Mako still just there in the background like stalwart, suddenly like on his back, EDG and the TES logos carried on one shoulder each. Like, motherfucker, this is ridiculous. It's like when I did that video on my Thorin's thoughts, so I explained how they should have done a final of LCS when Bjergsen and Jensen made it there. Like, you know, Bjergsen being like, this is my domain, no one can challenge me. And then Jensen like, no, and there's another. They just did it the very next time they did LCS. They did like a shit version of that. So it's like, Riot, the dumbest thing you ever did was this. You actually should, for real, have just used really talented people to do this stuff. But because your company hierarchy is so oppressively incompetent, even when you have Fion, you just blow him on some like puff piece. You just have him doing some shite thing. You don't have him doing these epic intros and the guy with a movie voice like, Faker, they said he could never win again, but he believed there was another way. And then suddenly like Gumayushi coming in and Kerry coming in. It's like, they don't ever think to do this shit. They don't. Here's the saddest thing of all, Monty. It's 2024. Riot Games has had control of the major regions since 2013, and they still don't understand esports. They think it's their fucking daughter clone that is making it all happen. They never got the magic. They really think, Monty, that it's not Messi's fucking left foot that makes the magic. It's the Umbro ball. It's the stitched together leather ball, not Messi. That's Riot Games for you in a nutshell. So you know what, Mark Merrill? You're actually welcome that we played your free game and gave you your whole fucking esports, moron. By the way, you should go and get boosted again, mate. You know, remember that time you completely violated all your own rules? So you got boosted, and then you were in a company where people farted in women's faces or whatever. Brilliant. Great job. A little free game from a startup company. I'm waiting for it to be a shut down company. Oh, the Saudis to buy it, one or two. The Saudis buying it really is just how we say Del Ende Est fucking Riot Games. Yeah. Just let the Saudis buy it and fucking ride that shit to the grave.
Well, on that note, shall we do some viewer questions?
Yeah.
All right. Take a quick break, guys. We'll be back with viewer questions.
Right, it's time for the viewer questions segment. So that is for people who are loyal subscribers of our Discord, the Last Free Nation Discord. If you subscribe there is a channel where you can ask questions. This is actually one of the better ways, along with buying the products and enjoying the benefits yourself, that you could support Last Free Nation.
we have the philosophy questions are popular recently. The neurobiologist Robert Sapolsky argues that determinism is true and that it's unethical to deny determinism and fight for free will. In his book, Determined, he argues we need to restructure society based on our awareness of determinism. Have either of you read his book? And no, I haven't read his book, but I am aware of Sapolsky. And have you thought of this argument? Well, I mean, there are, I would say, my limited knowledge of this and some of the stuff I've read is that there are increasingly large numbers of studies that show that genetics is a major, if not the most important factor in determining our personalities and therefore our actions to a certain degree. And so therefore the limits, there is limits on free will. So
Okay, I'll tell you how I immediately would counter this guy before I even was serious. I'd go, okay, are you one of these people who thinks bulldogs shouldn't be banned? Because if you think pit bulls genetically have that violent behavior, then it's not about how you train them, is it? But notice how when I shift the arena, suddenly your brain breaks because of politics. Also, by the way, you do know that if this argument is true, then literally, essentially, things like racial profiling in like fucking criminology might actually be a real thing that society would have to do. Because you're saying that it's nature versus nurture, but it's just nature. So I would say on that one, I've never understood what this obsession is with doing that, right? Because as far as I can tell, no person who says they don't believe in free will actually acts as though there isn't free will. They don't go, well, my wife just cheated on me and left me and took all the money. But you know what? There's no free will. So what choice did she have? And also when he goes, then you must acknowledge. Why must I acknowledge there's no free will, bro? What I'm doing is what I'm determined to do. How can I choose to do something? I've never understood, because half the time what they really mean is this, Monty. They don't really mean there's no free will. They mean they've taken the straw man that free will means you are a godlike entity, what I actually think, a spirit inside of a body, and you can choose to pilot the body and do things in this realm. What they're saying is essentially it's the other way around. You're a body and you act on like impulse responses, genetic coding, predispositions, in which case they don't really mean you. They don't really mean you can't choose, Monty. They mean you have a limited cone of choice and you can only choose within that. So they already oversex the story, because as far as I know, they always try to imply it's like that. Because when they say determinism, Monty, I take that as the classical version, like predestination. God set the machine in a very precise clock-like manner, and we're all going to go through. And it's like some Nietzschean eternal return, isn't it? So I don't know, because I feel like people are trying to have their cake and eat it on this one. So whatever, it's whatever on that one. What's your thoughts?
It has been mentioned previously that in LEC, certain GMs and talent scouts will use statistical hypothesis testing to try and assess new players. As someone who knows a bit about that field, I fail to see how it could be applied to something as dynamic and multifaceted as League. Do you guys think it is just a lazy way for people to not have to use their eyes to evaluate players, and then later if the player fails, they can blame their models and not themselves? I mean, look, I think stats is fraught in League of Legends. And you can see that conversation that we had about Peyz earlier in this episode, where it's like, I have to caveat the fact that he fucking played a bunch of Senna, right? Because that's not going to be reflected in the numbers that we're actually talking about. And it really does matter, you know, a team's play style, a player's like champion pool, what they're expected to play on their team is going to deeply affect their stats. So I am somewhat suspicious, and I do think the eye test is still king in League of Legends. But I also think that a lot of player scouts do use the eye test very actively from my conversations with teams. And if anything, I think teams have gotten much better at using the eye test, in my opinion. So I don't really know who's using these models, but I don't think, unless you have like a million caveats on them, I don't think they're very useful.
I would just say, watch the Best Damn League show. We talk about use of analyzing tools and whether or not enough GMs use them and what they can actually produce. Because my problem with that whole argument is, Monty, when you say it, when he's playing Senna, right, you're no longer arguing, was he the MVP or the best ADC? What you're saying is there's an excuse for why he didn't look like the best.
Yes.
Well, if he didn't look like the best, then he's not the best. What you mean is secretly he's the best. That's not what we're really having a discussion about, though, is it, at that point in time? So at that point, I don't really know what we're arguing. Aren't we arguing who the MVP of the league is? Not like who could have been if they'd have played differently and hadn't have had the same start. You know what I mean? Like that's the problem with that whole discussion. That's why I've always made it simple. I'll do a video on it one day. I actually cracked it semantically, which is here's what I realized, Monty. By definition, MVP is an individual award. True? It's an individual award. It's for one player. So when it doesn't say most valuable player of their team, it's the most valuable player of the league. So actually, the best player could always be the MVP in theory. If he's actually the best player, no matter what team he's on, he's the most valuable. So I don't know always what people are trying to do with that one. So I think essentially, the Best Damn League show will answer whether or not the stats and the analyzer should be used. I'll save that. I'm not going to give the juice here. You can watch that one.
Very good. What was your favorite season of League to watch? I think season 4 was the best for me. I love the players, the casters, the hype, and the feel of the game and the meta. And as a fellow Korean fellatio enthusiast, I love season 6. Not only was that the year you LCK guys told Riot to go fuck themselves, the MSI casting rate, I think this is the year the gap between Korea and the rest of the world was at its biggest. I think you could make a real argument the top 4 teams in the world were all in Korea. I think you could definitely do that with season 4 also, to be clear. I mean, my favorite was season 4 simply because of I think the concentration of talent in one region was unrivaled in season 4 before players started going to other regions. Korea was just so nuts, right? That for me, it was the favorite. I also think it had a really good diversity of skilled teams, had some very good like, you know, Samsung Blue versus KT Arrows, probably one of the best of fives that's ever been played in League of Legends. Also just the hype around the individual events, I think, was really good during that time period. And the packaging, the sports packaging, like the finals on the beach. I mean, it's just I think it was a good year. But that was, I believe that was before they changed the map, like updated the visuals of the map. So the game did look like shit at that time, but it was a fun season.
In theory, my favorite periods of League were the sort of seasons like 5 to 7 or whatever, where basically you could still side lane and there was multiple ways to play the game, and it wasn't just about hit the giant big red Baron button, hit the smaller rhythm game of getting the dragons and the souls. I think that is Fisher Price League of Legends. But with that said, I do think if you want to look at like competitiveness, how good the metas were, I think season 9 and actually last year season 13 were very viewable. Some of the best teams in all the major regions. LPL was incredible. I think it made for some of the most exciting international tournaments.
Yeah, the game might be worse, but the actual skill level of the teams is much better now. So, I mean, you have that.
The same argument with the NBA. They made the rules destroy the game, but you see a lot of individual skills, or some people like it more.
Where do you stand on the debate between Blade and Zonic for coaching GOAT? I think that their current teams are on paper at least of similar individual skill, but Na'Vi looks way better. If Blade hasn't taken the throne yet, what else do you think he has to accomplish?
It depends if you mean you have to win majors, because if you have to win majors, he's only got 2. The other guy has 4. 5 actually. And he did it with 2 different teams. So if you want to go on body of work, Blades is very impressive. I think he probably still needs a few more years. I think Zonic was excellent for like 5 straight years or something. So that's pretty hard to beat. So I would probably say Zonic for now. I also happen to know some of the things within Astralis that you guys don't know. Like I know that everyone wasn't super happy all the time. I know there was conflict. I know sometimes Glaive had different ideas. I know sometimes Magus had his own ideas about how he wanted to play. I know that Device, he can be a diva in his own way at certain times. Not in an extreme way, but just in a way that actually star players can. They had to keep rising up. They had to overcome that period where they took the events off and Liquid was the best. So I think he did a lot of man management people don't know about. I think Blade had, first of all, the greatest player of all time. And then in his other team, he's got people who are like misfits and are very unselfish. And as a result, do what he says. So let's see. I still think for me, longevity of being elite at your craft and body of work is one of the biggest factors. Because I always ask people, there's 2 ways you do GOAT. You're either doing this player would beat everyone, so it's peak year basically, who at their peak would beat everyone if they played in the same arena, or it's who had the best career. And that can be body work, can be accomplishments. So for me, I would still say Zonic, but Blade can be a close number 2. In the way that I actually still currently say Glaive's number 1 and maybe Carrigan's number 2. So we'll see if they accomplish more.
Do either of you use any specific planner or calendar, electronic or physical, to keep track of your responsibilities?
Yeah, Google Calendar.
We use that. For our shows, we use Trello as well to keep track of, you know, all of our sponsor obligations and stuff like that across the network. I use a physical piece of paper. I have a pad of paper in front of me most of the time. What are some changes you'd make to a Beyond the Summit reboot? I don't really have opinions on Beyond the Summit.
I've essentially been to one. I went to CS Summit one time. Are you ready, Monty? They loved me, did all skits with me, put me on the couch. The players were too pussy, except for something like 2 players to ever come on. They said, I won't go on the couch if Thorin's there. So already, I'll tell you can't have one in CS. They're fucking cowards. So you'll never get it. You'll never get the StarCraft 2 Beyond the Summit, which is what you all wanted. You'll never get it.
That was fun. Are we socially programmed to have monarchs in our lives? Almost every civilization in the history of mankind spent the majority of time living under an absolute monarch. Was that a coincidence? No, I just think it's like the easiest form of original government.
Do you know there's been studies done? Obviously, I don't say that like this is a fact. I say people have found something that might suggest something from this. And what they found is this, Monty. If you take a bunch of dogs who are the alpha of their pack and you put 10 of those dogs into a new pack, one will emerge as the alpha and one that used to be an alpha will become the runt of the litter. And if you take 10 runts and you make a pack, one will become the alpha and one will become the runt of the litter. I think in every scenario in prison, there's always a guy like that fucking Pennywise or whatever. What was his fucking name? I can't remember his name actually. The one from Prison Break who became the top guy who always runs the prison as the top. There's always these fucking. So I think actually it's the other way around. It's not that monarchs are. It's that monarchs are a reflection in that era of government of how humans think of things. And so if it's not a god, then it's a human who's on top. And that, because I also think the most essential part of a dictator or a king is he absolves you of responsibility because he's the king. So you never have to ever, if you lived in the Soviet Union, Monty, you could say none of it was your fault. Nothing in your life was your fault because I didn't have this, that, and the other. I didn't have this freedom over there. I didn't have this thing in America that they have. That's why, and you could then say it's all the fault of Stalin. It's all the fault of the dictator. I think that's actually a part people ignore is that people want to abdicate their responsibility. I've worked in companies, Monty. It's a nightmare because I treated everyone like they were me and they were all people who were self-motivated, driven. They wanted to do the best. They didn't have to be praised because they knew they were good enough. None of that is true. They wanted their hands held. They wanted someone to do their work for them. They wanted you to tell them something. They wanted you to go, oh, it's not my fault. You didn't tell me that. And then they all just wanted to abdicate the responsibilities. I think it's something in humans, unfortunately. Maybe it's pack behavior, tribal, who knows? But it just seems to be something that does manifest. And all I'll say is every single Western country I'm aware of that knows they have a Congress, a Senate, a Parliament, still treats the leader of the ruling party like he is a dictator. They still, in fact, what's the number one way you mock the leader? You portray him as Hitler or Stalin. To this day. So I think it's just obvious. Like at this point, actions reveal hidden preferences or concealed preference or whatever they say, right?
Okay, well, this is starting interestingly. Carmack has died in a Minecraft single-player solo server.
Can happen. You can die in service.
And the Saudis have sold their ownership in ESL to an ethical, inclusive, and safe corporation.
Know where this is going?
To celebrate this,
work the event or something. Come on.
They have decided to hire the two of you for $1 billion as their new media trainers. Yep. You have been tasked with training 3 players from CS and 3 players from Western League of Legends. Your training method is to show them pro wrestling promos and have them evaluate a wrestler/role to spearhead a new, more entertaining tournament circuit. You'll need 1 heel, 1 white meat baby face, and 1 anti-hero.
By the way, unironically, I thought about this the other day because I was watching Cologne, and that's one of the only events ever that I get the FOMO of because I've been in the access, mate. It's probably the best arena in all of Counter-Strike. Every year, it's insane. The fans, it's a totally mixed crowd across Europe. They always react to all the good teams and cheer for all the best squads. It has insane, like, presence when you're on the stage. It's better than a major. It just is. And the event's dope. But what I realized is, well, I can never work that event ever again, can I? Because the Saudis own it. But wait. What if one day the Saudis decide they don't give a fuck and they let esports go? By the way, we're at the point now, if you think how big esports became from where we began, Monty, even the idea I would be on American TV is insane. The idea we would ever be in the Seoul Olympic Stadium, that's impossible. These things already have happened. That Shaq bought into NRG, for fuck's sake. Rick Fox was an owner in the LCS. Like, these are insane things. By the way, there's a team in the Spanish Superliga that Casemiro, one of the fucking players that used to play for Real Madrid, owns. It's called Case Esports. Like, in the modern world, this is not an exaggeration. Someone like Elon Musk, if they wanted, suppose he was into Overwatch, he could just buy ESL if he wants. That's nothing to him. Maybe he does it for funsies or a whim. So if that happens, there's a world we could come back. So if we're going to pick players, like, let's pick them. We're taking, what was the styles we had to pick?
Heel, white meat babyface, and 1 anti-hero. Okay. So we have 3 players from Western League and 3 players from CS. Okay. So heel, babyface, anti-hero.
And the idea on this one is we're picking people who aren't already great at this. We're going to train them to be good at it.
Or, yeah, I mean, they might fit these. So he says the heel, The Rock, like The Rock, a babyface like 80s Hulk Hogan, and 1 anti-hero like Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah, I get the premise. Okay. Right, we'll do the league ones first. Believe it or not, I actually think the obvious angle is, it's just obvious. For babyface, you have to take Caps. because I actually think his personality is trash for a dominant player like he is. He has the personality that you'd think Whipple would have. Like, I'm wacky. It's like, hey, what am I playing? Like, I don't really mind. Like, I'm trying to be on top. Like, hey, they're good too. Like, that he doesn't play. He actually should be like, you know, fucking, I am Captain Europe or something, you know, like, oh, everyone behind me. Like, guys, I'm going to lead the way. I'm the ultimate baby face. Of course, we're going to win because we're the best and the fans out there are the best. Caps would be a mega one, but he just hasn't. He hasn't sort of like enhanced his personality. I'd do that one. Who are you thinking of for heel? Who would be a good heel for you?
Inspired.
I think he could embrace it. His problem at the moment is when he talks, he's just a little bit boring. Believe it or not, it's actually why I'm glad he did those interviews in America.
People will say APA, but he's not the right personality for that.
No,
honestly.
here's the thing. What you need to do with Inspired is tell him, bro, stop being this boring player who just explains when you're understanding the game and the scripts. No, what you need to do is this. You need to think of yourself as the evil mastermind and the bad guy always wins. That needs to be your personality. Your whole shit needs to be, of course, you guys don't understand what I'm doing in the game because I'm jungling on a Korean level. What are you, gold? In a NA solo queue. That needs to be like his actual fucking things. He needs to come out and go, hey, everyone in... Who gives a shit? It's fucking NA, and then win the game. That's it. Bro, he could be the best heel ever. He's even got the style for it. People hate that style because it's so like oppressive or it's the shit. There you go. Inspired. Right, for anti-hero. That's a hard one. Anti-hero.
I don't know wrestling well enough to know what the like Stone Cold Steve Austin role was.
Well, the whole point is he was against the company and he was the kind of guy where like you loved him even though he could have been a bit villainous because he also had like, you know, the secret heart of gold and would save like mankind when he's getting beaten up. So it's something like that. So I think for this one, I think an LEC, is there someone like this? Let me think of all the different teams. You know what? It actually could be someone like Humanoid. If Humanoid did it, because he even has that swagger, right? His whole shit, if he actually played it up properly, Monty, is like this. It's like, hey, I never said I was the best. I just said I was the only one who could beat Caps. That's the angle you want from Humanoid. You want that shit. That's the whole Fnatic vibe, isn't it? They're supposed to be the antagonists. So I think you could go with Humanoid for that one.
How about CS players?
Who would I pick for these? Right, the obvious one for Babyface, I think, is just Ziwu. Because he's a very wholesome character. He's just extremely good at the game. If anything, he's a bit unselfish. So his whole thing is, I actually wish he would just embrace the idea he's the best and sort of be the GOAT or whatever, but he doesn't. For heel, there's a load I could go with for this. Who would I actually pick, though? Because the sad thing is, by the way, the obvious, like, greatest heel ever probably is Simple. He just doesn't play anymore. So I don't know for that one because he was the GOAT, but he also, like, just sort of said, fuck everyone in a way.
Wasn't he more of an anti-hero?
It depends how we're defining this, doesn't it? So, who would I do for heel, though? Because in theory, it's got to be someone who potentially has like a bad attitude. Who could that be, though? Could maybe be like Dexter. He's only just come back, though, is the problem. He's a guy where people think he's like troublesome, or he's really skilled at the game. He doesn't really care what people think. That he could be in that category. Anti-hero would maybe be... Actually, Donk could be the heel too, because he actually does this shit where when he plays, he like screams at the other players who are all legendary players and tells them they're shit in Russian or whatever, you know, and smashes the table every time he loses. That could be pretty good. He could be a very good heel. He could be on some Sith shit. For anti-hero, that's a tough one, though. I feel like the anti-hero probably Carrigan, because he can be the heel if he wants. His problem is he's super popular as well. So he could actually fit the Stone Cold Architect form. And he's the one that went against the Astralis dynasty. He went against the Fnatic dynasty. He won in his own right in the end. It's kind of like you feel like he broke the meta of CS. Yeah, those are some good picks.
LCK has a series called Replay where they form a team of 5 retired pros that play matches against LCK challenger teams. Yeah, this actually is very cool. I love that they do this. My question to you guys is, if you could make a team of 5 retired pros, assuming they could all speak the same language, who would you pick for entertainment purposes?
Oh, easy. First of all, surely Mad Life. Entertainment?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even because the thing about this is like you actually get to see them play and get comms and stuff like that. Come on, give me Forgiven and Dardoch on the same team, please. Let's fucking go. Let's go.
I mean, if we're going entertainment, Soaz is a pretty good shout.
Yeah, Soaz top, okay. Dardoch jungle, but Froggen in mid, that'd probably be pretty funny with those players.
And then who are we doing for support, though? Probably should just be Hillsang still plays. Who doesn't play anymore? Who could actually be support though?
Would be
Does
entertaining.
Afromu? You can have
Afromu's pretty
Afromu.
good.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. It's also a pretty good team, by the way. Like that team actually could have played in like season 5 or something, couldn't it? Or maybe I guess like season 6. Okay, season 6. There you go. Roll it back. Play that team.
You are teleported back in time to late 2012. Riot puts you in charge of designing their upcoming LoL esports circuit. Which priorities do you value in making decisions? Which people do you empower and which people at Riot do you remove from the decision-making power in order to create the best possible? You have to remove everybody at Riot, by the way.
Yeah, almost everyone.
But there were only like 3 people there at the time, so it wouldn't be very hard to remove them. But I mean, I think you actually design a better international circuit, first off. Like, the problem is that you didn't actually have, like, well, in 2012, to be fair, we still had International League of Legends. Like, the big mystery to me, Thorin, is how could you look at 2012 League of Legends when the Western teams were going and competing in Korea and, you know, CLG EU was almost winning. They were 1 game away from winning a title in Korea and be like, yeah, we don't want this. It's like, what? It was so exciting. It was so exciting to actually see the level of competition at that time. So I would say definitely you're trying to build a more robust international circuit where you have shorter. I mean, I think what OGN did was great. I liked having, but imagine if we had 3 tournaments a year per region and they fed into 3 international events. Like we could have.
I've always said, if you want something like a league, so there's some like period a year, you can tell a sponsor, I'll guarantee this many games, this many weeks. You could do it, but just have one small split of a league. Maybe it lasts 4 weeks and you play, I don't know, 3 best of ones a week or whatever. And at the end, you win the league. By the way, don't have playoffs. That's not what a league is, dickhead. You just win the league, like Premier League. Number 1 gets to win. And then aside from that, the rest of the year, like you say, is a roadshow of events. It's a LAN in Sweden. It's a LAN in Germany. It's a LAN in Vegas. It's a LAN in New York. It's a LAN in Toronto. It's a LAN in LA. And then you go into international tournaments. And by the way, international tournaments, we're not making it like you qualify from the region. No. It's like fucking CS or something. Like the biggest teams are all there. And it's super hype and all the best squads are there. And because we have 3 of them in a year, here's the best part. You know, those teams that dominate in spring, they win the spring championship. You know, the ones that are only good in summer, like KT, they win the summer championship. And then someone wins the last one. And all the greatest players in history get their chip. That's the circuit I would make.
Which books have had the greatest influence on the kind of reading you like to read? Fiction or non-fiction?
Fiction easily.
Which like fan. what kind of like what books the fiction or nonfiction have had the greatest effect on the kind of reading? I would say for me, like Moby Dick is definitely one because I think it translated into a lot of like Age of Sail interest from me. So that is both fiction, you know, like the Jack Aubrey Maturin series, or nonfiction works about like ships and sailing that I think are particularly interesting. So there's one for me that translated into a bunch of other stuff.
I mean, I would say obviously Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, because I actually like books that are about sort of characters taking on archetypal philosophical worldviews. That's why I like Ayn Rand, etc. Obviously my favorite book is God Emperor of Dune, and I actually have noticed, even though this is actually why I think shonen animes are incredibly overrated, I like really intelligent adult books that are about like hyper intelligent characters who try to control everything. There's actually a comic people won't even know, it's an independent one called Grendel, where it's a guy who's like a villain, but he's trying to like have his own way of like controlling things. I like that sort of character. Yeah, there you go.
For Thorin, do you know of the pro wrestling journalist Dave Meltzer? And if so, what are your thoughts on him?
He's all right. I actually find most journalists quite overrated. I think Ariel Hanwani's quite overrated. Like half of them just either do analysis or they like try and be part of the story themselves. So none of them seem to be in my field where they want like the big narratives. The joke is I probably shouldn't even be a journalist, Monty. I should actually just be like creative director of like fucking Valve Software or something, you know, like some shit like that. And I just do the storylines for the majors or whatever. Like that's probably the gig I should do. Because what I've basically done is I went into journalism and used the tools and the vehicle, the platform of journalism to tell the stories I wanted anyway.
Any tips on falling asleep quicker? I don't really have a problem with falling asleep. So
I'll give you them, but you're not going to do them all. You're going to go have headers and won't do any of them. So are you ready? Are you ready? Thorin's tips. If you follow all these, it'll work. So 1, don't ever take naps. Oh, but I didn't get that much sleep last night. Doesn't matter. You're going to go to bed at 10 p.m., 11 p.m., midnight. Whatever your bedtime is, you always go to bed. And guess what? You're setting your alarm. You're getting up at that time. So I get up at 10 a.m. no matter what happened in the night. Might have had 3.5 hours. I'm getting up at 10 a.m. and I'm going to use the fact I'm going to be tired and not nap to get to my bedtime again. And that's going to make it easier next time. Secondly, no caffeine. They would tell you after 3 p.m. I'll make it reasonable. 6 p.m., no caffeine. I would also suggest don't have loads of caffeine. Have one early on, have maybe one more in the afternoon if you need it. Don't do loads though. I always tell you, one portion of game is all I ever have in a day. Unless I was at an event, I was working 4 best of 3s. It's the only time I ever did the other one. Secondly, try to have your meal done by about 6 or 7 p.m. and no more food after that. Allow your body to have done digestion and then it gets so it's not digested while you're asleep. Lastly, just take the obvious, most famous vitamins and supplements ever. Magnesium, zinc, glycine, drink chamomile tea. An hour later, go to bed. If you do all those, don't look at screens after 10 p.m. Read a book 1 hour before bed. If you do all these things, I guarantee pretty much you will sleep. But you won't do them all, and you'll still tell me they don't work. You know how I know they work? I do them. And by the way, I didn't invent a single one. They're all ones that people will tell you. And everyone's heard them. This is society. But you don't want that. You want the Ozempic pill that makes you go to sleep without having to do any of that, don't you? So go on, crack another bevy, have another fucking plate of fries, watch that anime until you get tired, go to bed without any of those magnesium and go to bed vitamin deficient, still digesting something. Look at your food. I can't go to sleep. I wonder what's on Twitter. I can't go to sleep. Oh, it's fucking bullshit. It's all bullshit. I think I'm ADD. This question session is fucking wild. Keep going.
How do you stop caring about something that you don't think is important anymore? Should you try to block those thoughts or try to find more important things elsewhere? Well, I just stop caring. I don't understand these questions. Like, how do you go to sleep? I just do it. How do you stop caring about something that's not important? I just stop. I don't know what.
I mean, he sort of nailed it, but he didn't say explicitly. 1, remove as much of it as you can from your life. So if you want to stop caring about politics, unsubscribe from every politics thing on your newsfeed. Don't go on any websites. If someone says, have you heard about this? Just go, oh, I'm not really interested in that. Sorry. Hey, what do you think about this thing over here? Secondly, you've nailed it. Distract yourself with something else. Go for like long walks at night in the fucking countryside. I don't know. Pick something like that. Pick a fucking bonsai tree trimming. Start playing, doing a fucking puzzle. Read an interesting book that has nothing to do with now. Just distract yourself and remove the input. I think you'll find it'll work. You'll stop caring. It's actually why, by the way, the number one piece of advice in the modern era I would give young men if you have a breakup is delete everything you have about her. Every picture, every log, every text. Block her number if you want, bro. Make it so she doesn't get unfriend her on Facebook. Remove all the Instagram pictures. If you can't ever go back to that, I promise you your memory will fade. It will happen. It will fade. But if you keep reigniting it, it's going to be a nightmare for you.
I've got an even hotter tip, Thorin. Literally, don't post any pictures of you and your significant other together ever.
I mean, I would suggest that being in an ordinary, they always take them offline when they break up anyway. So it seems like the obvious move, isn't it? I know.
Just don't do it. just don't do it in the first place. I didn't do it. I think it's different when you're married and you have that more serious, like allegedly permanent commitment. But especially if you're just starting to date somebody, for God's sake, don't do that. While ESL1 Cologne and Katowice have the best format out of all the CS2 events and has the setup for 2 days of BO3 and 1 of BO5 finals, it still doesn't feel right that the team to win the group stage just gets 1 life instead of the 2 for every other team. Do you feel like
he's doing double in them again? He's doing it again.
God. Do you feel like an upgrade can be made to that format, or do you feel it's good as it is?
We aren't imagining. We've watched real double elim tournaments with 2 lives and a bracket reset. They fucking suck. You can watch them. Look up all these events, bro. They exist. The early CPLs, loads of shit in fighting games, and Magic the Gathering. They all exist. You can go watch them. If you don't believe us, you go watch us. It's out there. It's out there, mate. We don't have to theorize.
I remember
This is
going to
better. I'm
I
telling
remember
you,
going
it's
to the
better.
close qualifiers for the Cologne 2016 major as a young lad, and being quite surprised that about 40% to half of all the pros that I admire were smokers. Esports is obviously quite stressful, but has there been a shift away from smoking? What's the situation over in Korea? I mean, a lot of pros smoke in Korea. A lot of people smoke in Korea. I mean,
Probably
look,
because it's a mega high stress fucking society, isn't it?
it's also like Korea's gotten less friendly to smokers over the years. When I first moved to Korea, you could still smoke inside in every bar. You can't do that
Oh, we
anymore.
did like the UK where you can't do that, right?
Yeah, you can't. You haven't been able to do that probably in like 10 years.
Yeah,
But
similar to UK, yeah.
when I first came over, like you could absolutely smoke at any bar. I think probably fewer pros smoke now, but I mean, it's just one of those things. Like, look, it's like the restaurant industry, right? The only way you ever get a break is by going outside to have a cigarette. That's it, right? And I think especially for people who tend to be introverts, having some time to like step away and not talk to anybody, you just don't get that otherwise, right?
Well, remember, one of the ways if you can't talk to people that for free you get conversation
Yes.
is when they ask for the cigarette, they're almost obliged to at least say something. Oh, what do you think about this? And then it's a free convo in it.
Right. I mean, this is why I like smoking and drinking, right? Like I enjoy having a cigarette outside if I'm at a bar for a while, because like honestly the noise and everything is like almost is like overwhelming to me after a while, and I need to, you know, take some time off and like, yeah, anyway. But I think in general, like a lot of pro players probably still do, but it's probably less than it used to be, I don't know, in 2016. 10 years ago there were probably more.
In general, I don't know about America, but most places in Europe, people smoke less now, partly because of the bar thing,
Yep.
partly because it's looked down on a culture, partly because, funnily enough, I've actually done some research into this, and it actually is quite a base topic. It actually, funnily enough, to refer back to something earlier, Monty, it actually seems to me like largely the lung cancer thing seems to probably be a genetic component, much like alcoholism, bro. Some people can drink tons of fucking alcohol, they never become an alcoholic. It's weird. Some people drink a little bit and they're fucking out of control and they can't touch a drop.
Yeah.
Seems like it's like that with smoking. So actually, the reason I bring this up is because actually in Europe, at least, mate, that's not even a discussion. Lung cancer is directly because of smoking. People all believe it. As a child, it's banged into your head. So a lot of people don't do it for that reason. So I would say the reason why in CS there are still loads of smokers is because we have loads of Eastern European players in CS now. And famously, it's mega cheap for cigarettes in Russia. They all smoke there. It feels like every one of them does. So it's more that thing. If you still had loads of Swedes, I don't think there'd be as many.
Well, it's also nicotine's a stimulant. So, I mean, it does help with mental focus. That's kind of inarguable. Like it just works. It just works. It's good for that.
It's like that thing where people don't realize they hear that story. Like, you know, a lot of like the stormtroopers in World War II were on methamphetamine. They make
duh.
they make to help them. Like that's why they were fucking like killer machines, berserkers. What are you talking about? Like I can imagine in the short term that'd make you pretty sick at fighting, mate.
Also, look, if I was in World War II and you were like, well, you could go to sleep and potentially die while you're sleeping, or you could take some meth and be awake. I think I'd take some meth and be awake. This is the defense mechanism, right? Like, it doesn't really matter if you're doing meth if you're dead. You know what I mean? Like, if that's the choice you're making, just do some meth. Why are the bros of Breon such captivating underdogs to support? Well, I would argue the concept. I don't think they are, but I guess some people do. In comparison to their more depressing parallels in other leagues like Rogue, is it just the LCK casters' excellent ability to romanticize those wonderful misfits, or is their appeal genuine? I've talked about this before, but one of the things that Doa and I realized when we came to Korea was that we had to bridge the gap because our audience didn't speak Korean, so we had to like make the players larger than life in certain ways, right? And I think that has always been a feature of Korean esports, but especially in League of Legends, that has been carried on. And I think that if you are a caster and you have this god-awful team that you have to represent, like, you know, we did this with Jin Air as well, and like the Glad plane and everything like that. Like, you have to like build these narratives up because your audience isn't going to get anything directly from the players with the language barrier. Even if there is translated content, it is partially your job in order to build that up. Whereas if you did this kind of stuff with Western teams, then the Western teams would be like, that's not our brand, and they'd like come in there and get mad at you and whatever. The Korean teams don't give a shit, and the Korean players don't give a shit about what's said about them in English, so you have more leeway. But I also think, like, you know, it's been a fun meme that's developed, and yes, I do think the casters perpetuate it, and they do a good job of it, but that's because they have much more leeway into the shaping of the brands, because those brands are Korean brands, right? So I think it's just a good technique. Like, you can't do that with Rogue, because Rogue will get in there and be like, we want to be portrayed this way. How dare the casters say this thing, right? They don't roll with the memes.
Also, because they're Korean, they can still fuck around and occasionally actually beat a top team.
Yeah.
There's also decent skill even in some of the bad teams.
So I do think there's an advantage to being on the LCK cast that I myself have taken advantage of in the past. Most lopsided BO5s you can think of in LoL history. I know the G2 versus GX series wasn't the most lopsided. It was pretty dumpstery, though.
I mean, there was the famous one that was the shortest, where they just destroyed Origin because they couldn't handle like triple flex picks or whatever in Season 9 Spring. That was pretty wild. That was pretty bonkers. By the way, Gioto, I just did my interview series, even said like they were unbeatable. There's nothing you could do against that.
Maybe G2 versus TL MSI finals.
Sure.
I mean, there have been a lot of stomps. I don't know off the top of my head. Will there be a Steven Seagal arc in foreplay?
Well, maybe. Funny thing is, there are obviously some good movies.
Maybe. It doesn't sound,
like Under Siege is fun. Yeah,
it sounds fun.
There's some fun movies.
Now that you've successfully caused the Acolyte to be canceled, what shows are you gunning for next to avoid having to review Unheard Legion? I think The Boys is definitely way up there at this point in time. God, that last season was bad. Boys is way up there, even though some people still really like that show. Most Marvel shows, I would say. Any Marvel show that comes out now, those are all fucking garbage. Any Star Wars show that's not Andor. I mean, most of it's just trash, man. Most of it's just trash. It's been pretty disappointing. Although House of the Dragon, still enjoyable. Before Summoning Insight started, you both had established fan bases that likely did not have extensive overlap. What do each of you think your original fan base gained from being exposed to your co-host through this show?
Well, I don't think I had a fan base at the time. Like, I used to just be a journalist. I was a byline. People didn't really know me. They just knew the content.
Yeah, you were the guy who wasn't on camera interviewing people. Do you believe you created a unique group of esports enthusiasts because of your pairing that wouldn't exist otherwise? Probably. I mean, just due to longevity and synergy and working on a variety of projects together, like, you know, this show, Flashpoint, LFN as a whole now. So,
I mean, by the way, we are just the anti-hero of esports.
Exactly.
That's our whole brand in it.
Given Mando is sponsoring some LFN shows, what are your favorite non-Mando fragrances, be it freshly cut grass, lavender, roses, etc.? What are your favorite smells?
The problem is, just like with wine, I have no palate for scents. Like, all perfume smells the same to me, Monty. I don't even like the smell of it. So I don't really have one, I'm afraid.
My sense of smell, I have a giant nose, and my sense of smell is fucking garbage. It's like really
one of the weirdest things is, even though I love weed, I despise when I'm not smoking, smelling the smell of weed. I think it's really disgusting when someone smoked in the area, you know?
Here's one. I love the smell of pipe tobacco. That shit smells incredible. Cigarettes smell like shit, but pipe tobacco smells
I like the smell of Korean barbecue. Bulgogi, frying away on the hot
sizzling
steak.
Yeah. Lavender's pretty good, though. I like lavender. The year is 2050, and you have exclusive access to the esports memory hole. What are your top 3 events or bits of info that you would want to bring to light from 2000 to 2025? So in 2050, we can unmemory hole 3 events from 2000 to 2025.
Ooh, okay. Like, what was memory hold? I mean, you already gave one that's a good one. That hole that they had the whole thing with OGN to make millions, and then they just pretended they didn't. There's one. That's a pretty good one.
Nicole LaPointe Jameson.
That'll probably be forgotten in a few years. Yeah.
It's already
By the
forgotten.
way, she's the bigger topic than even the Danny thing. The Danny thing was just one sub-story within her competence. She ran like a giant org in the ground, which, remember, bought in for millions and millions and then left for 6 million. Like, that's insane. By the way, she's got to be one of the worst CEOs in the history of, like, esports. Easy. What would the third one be?
Anything from the early 2000s? Angel Munoz moments?
Oh, and I maybe pick, like, World Cyber Games. Because, Monty, people are acting like it's incredible that we have LEC finals in a studio.
Back in the day.
WCG would go to the biggest stadiums and places in the world, and it would have enormous events that felt 10 times bigger than some of the European events now. So, yeah, WCG was pretty insane. It was in all the massive countries. So in America, Europe, China, all over the place.
I saw that there was a company named Iliad and thought of Monty on my honeymoon trip to Italy. If you could name a company that would sponsor a show, what name would that be and to which show? So if we could pick any company name to sponsor a show.
As in, we're making up the name.
I mean, the obvious one for me is like, let's get some MonteCristo cigars to sponsor some of my shows. Those are great Cuban cigars, man. Let's go on that one.
I don't know for that one. It's just not an interesting question to me.
Which league has the most insufferable KC fans? The NFL or the LEC? That's a good one.
The problem is, you probably know this, Monty. The fucking Patriots fans acted like they were Tom Brady. It was crazy.
Yeah. The Patriots fans were by far the worst, by the way.
They used to act like it was for real, them being from Boston and having that chowder. That was why they won the fucking NFL. That's how stupid those people were. It was fucking crazy. It was actually crazy. Because they used to do that thing that drove me mad, Monty. They used to go, Brady's out there just throwing the fucking Tom, Dick, and Harry off the fucking bed. It's David Gronkowski and Randy Moss, you moron. What are you talking about? Even Wes Welker was pretty good with the Broncos. Like, these are pretty good players.
Wes Welker was a great slot receiver.
Yeah. Also, I'm just going to act like he didn't have, by the way, do you know how many Hall of Fame players they had on defense? By the way, my boy Stephon Gilmore, he'll be in the Hall of Fame one day. Like, that's some fucking phenomenal players. So the Patriots fans were insufferable. Like, I followed a lot of sports, but they were some of the worst, bro. They were the worst.
Yeah, the current KC fans, at least they still have known pain, because Kansas City was just a garbage franchise for, like, I don't know, its entire existence up until they got Mahomes and Andy Reid. So, you know, they're annoying, but they're still somewhat reasonable because most of them remember the bad times. Most of them remember the bad times. Because, I mean, Kansas City just spent decades just getting, like, completely fisted by the Raiders or, like, by John Elway and Peyton Manning.
I thought he meant, are there, like, the equivalent of Carmine fans in the NFL? I didn't know he meant Kansas City. Wait a minute, Kansas City fans are that bad? I don't think they're that bad.
No, they're not.
Seem pretty chill to me.
No, the question was, which league has the most insufferable KC fans? The NFL or the LEC?
The LEC wins hands down. Yeah,
much worse.
Bro, I actually have this. I haven't done it yet. A mean comments one. I could do a whole one about Carmine Corp fans. If I said that I think, like, they did a bad job bringing up Sacken, they would just say, "I hope your mother is raped to death, whore." That's what they would just say straight up on their account to me. Yeah. How can you get worse than that, by the way?
Are there any stories, movies, shows, books where you love the ideas and worlds, but felt like the writer failed those ideas by bad plot and bad writing?
Loads.
Like everything. By the way, that is the story of every single anime ever, almost. Because anime doesn't have a concept problem. It has a fucking crazy execution problem. Like, if you describe the concept of many animes to people, you'd be like, well, that's an interesting thought experiment. But then they just do it really badly. But I mean, almost anything is the answer. It's tons of options. I mean, we talk about this.
Loads of the superhero shows are like that. Like the concept's great, but it's terrible execution.
Also, half of Foreplay is us complaining about this exact thing where we say, this was a good idea. It was just done badly. So go watch Foreplay, because that's, I mean, we talked about that, on like every single film on our last arc. Well, not 500 Days of Summer. That was just a bad idea, also executed badly. But the movies we picked, I think, all could have been good, but were flawed in some way. Which artists from bands that went solo do you like, and which solo careers do you think shouldn't have happened? Well, let's just do the ones that we like, because like there's probably a million of them that shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Trying to think.
I can do a couple. So I was a fan of the Smiths, but I actually like Morrissey's solo work a lot. I was a fan of Oasis, but I like Noel Gallagher's solo work. There's a couple for you.
I'm not sure
There's
if
not that many more, though. I'm not really a huge fan in general of like, I think I prefer bands to individual people usually.
Yeah, I can't think of any off the top of my head. Did any of you watch the new animated movie of Watchmen? I didn't even know this existed, so no. Have you heard that they made an animated Watchmen?
Yeah. Just don't have any interest in it.
It's really hard because they fucked up Watchmen a lot, so it's hard to feel excited for it.
But what's sad is there's loads of people, a real take is like, oh, the movie's pretty good. It's like, then we just have nothing to agree upon. Have a good life. See ya. Bon voyage. Bon voyage.
What is your favorite best of series in any version of Counter-Strike? And why is it your favorite? Last question.
I mean, an obvious one I can immediately think of is I did think that the IEM Clone 2022 final between Peyz and Na'Vi was extremely good. It was the best of 5. It was amazing. That's one of the best ones I've ever seen. That's got to be up there. There was one I actually referenced recently from 1.6 where I actually casted it remotely, and it was in China, but because it was on own TV, it doesn't exist on YouTube. So brilliant. Can't watch that, of course. It was between Na'Vi and Fnatic. It was at IEM 5 Shanghai. It was sadly the event where that 6 guy tragically died on the car ride to go to the event. And that's one of the most famous things about it. Yeah. He just died in a car accident. He flipped over. He had like an open top or something. He just died.
God damn. All right, guys, that was the last question. Got through them all this week. We will see you next week for more League of Legends playoff action. See you then.